Everybody, good to have you here tonight.
I'm going to grab a pencil while you're going.
No problem. No problem at all. No problem. We, as you all know, by virtue of the email we sent on this topic, and perhaps even in your perusal of the packet, there were a couple proposals that the applicants believe were not given their proper review, and certainly one of which was filtered by our spam and junk filters, and did not make the spreadsheet nor the table, if you will, of council's review. So if I could turn the time over to Fleur to walk us through some of those elements. You have your spreadsheet in front of you with regard to the decisions you've made thus far. In the event you want to amend what you've put forward here to accommodate what you see in front of you tonight. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could turn the time over to Fleur.
Yes, please. Fleur, welcome.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. So as City Manager Napier stated, we did have one applicant who was filtered out, and they called me, I think, Wednesday after your decisions, and we found their email, and they had requested $280,000, and so we've added that to the spreadsheet for your review, and they asked council to reconsider. And then the other was Youth Crisis Center, and on their application they had indicated that they wanted 100,000 years of funding, but they thought it was yearly, so what they wanted was 400,000. So every year they wanted 100,000. So their total ask should have been 400,000. So those are the two. Your pre-meeting packet did have the applications and a letter from the Youth Crisis Center director.
So remind me at the end of our meeting when we decided to throw that last little bit at the library, how much money was there? I think it was 87,000 and some change, if I remember correctly. Can you give me the exact number, please?
I'm not sure if let me see if I can. It's inside there.
It's pretty dang close. I think it is too, if my memory serves.
327.
I beg your pardon?
We gave them 327, 514. And I think they were asking for 290 for security, so.
240, I think they were asking for.
Yeah, I think we approved 240 right off the bat, and then the 290
So
was
that'd
what
be the difference
extra
of
was.
87,514. So that's really, in a sense, what we have to play with. And I'll open it up to all the counselors, of course, but my opinion is Youth Crisis Center got what we felt they deserved. Even though they wanted 100,000 a year, our impression was that it was for the 4 years. And so we gave them what we have. The only question would be, would you be comfortable pulling the 87,000 back from the library and giving that to the Salvation Army? Sir.
Thanks, Mayor. My only concern with that is when I read through the Salvation Army application, I brought this concern up the other evening, but it seemed to be they were applying for funding to expand their programming to get into the transitional housing aspect of things. That's a concern for me because we already have entities doing, it felt like a duplication of services, and I would not be a supporter of expanding programs to duplicate services already being provided in the community by people that's kind of their bread and butter. And so that was my concern about that application.
Can you pull that up for me where I can see it? I don't have, my iPad's already out on the dais, so.
The full application or just
No, just that.
Our focus is on expanding current programs and services which address transitional housing, housing stability, supportive social, workforce development. I mean, that's a lot of what the Casper Housing Authority does and will be doing a lot more of once they get their new facility renovated and off the ground. So again, if we were gonna give anyone 80 grand for those things, I would say give Housing Authority another 80 grand to finish their project. And yeah, that was my concern about that application.
Fair enough.
They
So,
had also
so
mentioned,
noted.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
They had
Fran.
also mentioned something about the Hope House, and we had already funded the Hope House, or is that a
Hope
separate
Center.
one? So they're different.
Oh.
I believe it's different.
Okay, that was my question.
Well, the only two that I was made aware of was the Salvation Army and the Youth Crisis Center. Okay,
That's
so,
So the Hope Center is Salvation Army, Hope House is the one we funded.
Yes.
okay. Sir,
Since I wasn't here for a lot of the discussions, what were your guiding principles on allocating funds and things.
We had
because-
2.25 million
Yeah, I knew that.
for $5.8 million worth of asks.
Right.
Our main guiding principle was trying to make sure that the ones that needed it got at least some, and that were aligned with council goals.
Okay, because I knew at one time, when we were initially talking about how much to allocate for this project or program, we had talked about the fact that we, as the city, use it for capital projects and not operations. And so should that be something we were looking at here? The other thing was, and you stated it, is what things add value, and they were already in our original budget, but like the child advocacy project, which directly implements and ties in with the police department, so that we initially even had in the budget before this all came about. And so did we look at that part of it as well, which I think is the part you were talking about tying in with council.
We did. In fact, I can share with you that we, Boys and Girls Club came to us for a substantial amount of money, and it was mainly for security and things like that we are already addressing in North Casper, or will be addressing with the skate park. And so it was, we didn't fund them.
Okay.
And I think we gave them something, but we didn't fund them to the tune that they wanted.
No,
We didn't give them anything, and that was why.
Okay.
So yes, we did, and to
Okay.
answer your question.
But I was, here again, I'm trying to get caught up a little bit on
Sure.
what was going on. With that having been said, a question I do have to ask as well is, I was under the impression that a lot of times our police department takes youth to the Youth Crisis Center rather than to jail as kind of an intermediate positioning, so to speak. So they are becoming, say, a first stop. Is that a true statement or? Okay. Then following along those lines, instead of giving that extra money to, say, the Salvation Army, which you already have concerns about, and the fact that the Youth Crisis Center had screwed up on what they thought the allocations were, that in essence, they were actually asking for 100 a year or 400, and we've given them 20. Maybe we ought to give them the other 37.
Keep in mind, there is no other money. All monies were dealt out, all of them. In fact, every counselor went through and gave their opinion of what every single one of those should get.
Yep.
And they came out to an average. We voted on those average, which we pretty much stuck very close to. By the time we were done, there was $87,000 left out of 2.25 million. And that 87 was actually awarded to the library to help with security issues that they're having with homeless and some other things over there. So there really is no other money. If we decide to do anything, we've got to strip it from somebody. So just so
You had mentioned that money that was left over at the end that we gave to the library.
Right, but we gave it to them, is what I'm saying. It's been allocated to them, so we would literally have to go take that back.
Well, we haven't given it to them until we vote on it.
Do it pass a resolution.
True,
Right, yeah.
true.
So I have a question.
Please.
We did decide on the BMX last minute because it was our responsibility. Is there any way that we can find the money for that parking lot elsewhere and use that 150?
Mr. Mayor, we would have to take it from streets. We'd have to take it from other building projects that we've prioritized. We'd have to take it from other capital that you would essentially be giving up in order to fund that. And so that would be, if the council would direct us in that regard, what I would have to come back with.
I don't know that I'd be comfortable with that, and I will tell you, I am comfortable with pulling the $87,000 from the library. We gave them over almost $250,000, and that is a county institution. They came to the city asking for money. It would not hurt my heart at all after giving them $240,000 to move that $87,000 somewhere else. Wouldn't bother me a bit.
So their letter request said that they would be willing to alter their request to 279,
Who?
the YCC. So my question is, if we allocate or look at any of these again, is there any way we can get them to their minimum request that they said that's their bare budget minimum to make it the next 4 years?
You have something, Jenna?
I just want to say is that, we we gave the Youth Crisis Center the 100, right? I think, hindsight, whatever, I think we should leave it at the 100 of what we gave it to them. And then just figure out a way to make it right with Salvation Army somehow, with a little bit that we were doing, being that it kind of got lost in the spam.
Well, we're not the only ones that support the Youth Crisis Center either.
Right. Exactly. At least they're getting something. I mean, and that's how their application was interpreted.
Well, even if we had their application up front and the point been brought up that, wait a minute, we're funding something that's already being funded 3 other times elsewhere, we probably wouldn't have funded them anyway, to be honest with you.
Who's this?
The Salvation Army. So, I mean, no offense to them and what they're trying to do, but Kyle brought up a very good point that would have been brought up had their application been in the mix in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And my guess is they probably wouldn't have received funding anyway.
And nobody got full funding.
Well,
First place.
a couple of our folks did. There were a couple that did get full funding, but they weren't asking for, yeah, they were smaller amounts. They weren't asking for nearly as much.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, whatever you folks deem reasonable or would like to do, we can certainly take this under advisement and wait till we have a full council. I don't know when this is, we don't delve out these monies until July. So we could even get through budgets and still come back to this and fine tune it before it goes to a resolution. Isn't that true?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, certainly as it relates to passing your budget, that occurs officially and formally in the third Tuesday in June. I would say from a practical standpoint, however, it would really be helpful if we knew what direction you were going by the 24th of May. Because at that point, we got to stitch it,
Then I would
and
suggest,
put it together.
I don't know what our work session looks like next week. But if there's a way to slide it in there when we have a full consortium to get our minds around this, I'll bet you we could come up with a solid answer for you by next week. If that pleases you.
We'd be happy to embrace your direction.
And I don't think we'll need a lot of time, but I think, I would think 15 or 20 minutes would, and if we have to move our meeting up 15 minutes early, our pre-meeting next week, or not our pre-meeting, but our work session, I think that would be appropriate. And then we have all the minds wrapped around it, because I know Ray's very passionate about a lot of these things as well, and so, but I can tell you, Steve, there was a couple baseball clubs that asked for $750,000 to AstroTurf their fields. We didn't give them anything, I don't believe. So, there are things that aligned with our goals better, if you will. So, with Salvation Army on the table, Kyle's brought up some good points. That'll give us some time to do a little more research on that. And so if everybody's okay with that, if I can get a thumbs up, we will move this item to next week. And please be prepared to either figure out, go back and look at what we've done. If you think we need to find a few dollars here or there or somewhere else, we can certainly do that. It's just, but it would be better if we come to the meeting with a plan, not try to develop one once we're here. So if that makes sense, everybody okay with that? Yeah. Okay, very good. So, all right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any more
Appreciate
questions
that.
concerning 1 cent, sir?
I think that covers it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right, Youth Crisis, okay. Corporate sponsorship and naming rights agreement, and we are 25 minutes ahead of schedule. Rockin'.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we've had this item come up a couple times before. You'll recall that we went through a formal RFP process to try to procure the services of experts in the field that go through corporate naming and sponsorship seeking, if you will, as it relates specifically to public facilities and government-owned facilities. We had some really intriguing proposals, all of which didn't work out, with the exception of a discussion with OVG. And you'll know that OVG is our operator up at the Ford Wyoming Center. We have been working with them since that formal process essentially ended, if you will, and we believe we've got a pretty compelling opportunity with respect to OVG that we would suggest you consider. And if you're so inclined, even give us direction to move forward with a formal adoption of an agreement. With regard to that possibility, I've asked Zulema to give you a little more detail with regard to what that involves and where we go from here, if it pleases the council.
Yes, sir. Zulema?
Mayor, councilors, good evening. So as the city manager indicated, we've actually been looking to partner with a third-party agency for about a year now to have them solicit and secure corporate sponsorships and naming rights that could add a more stable and consistent revenue stream to some of our recreation enterprise funds primarily, but opportunities elsewhere as well. And again, we did go through a formal request for proposal process last summer that yielded 4 proposals. We did interviews, a fairly extensive vetting process. The panel was Pete Myers, Phil Moya, our recreation manager, and myself. And we're kind of new in this world. And so we asked a lot of questions. We went back and forth several times with the vendors about what possibilities there may exist for kind of stepping outside of traditional recreation assets to see if there were opportunities, say at the parking structure or something like that. And so it was a months-long process, which yielded a lot of fantastic information for us, but unfortunately put the vendor that we ultimately offered a contract to in a position where they had already secured some additional business and didn't feel like they had resources adequate to give us the time and attention we would need. So shortly after that, we did receive a proposal from Oakview Group, OVG 360, our manager at the Ford Wyoming Center. And given the partnership that we already have with them and the sponsorships and naming rights support that they provide through Dan Foote, their director of partnerships up there, a local who lives in the community and knows our community well, we do feel like we have a compelling opportunity to create some additional synergy there with that agency providing the support for us. So really, it's a commission-based agreement. We pay nothing generally unless they are able to secure a partnership for us, and then their payment would come from the revenue that we receive for the agreement. There is in the agreement, as it is likely to be proposed, a small stipend for travel, which we don't necessarily anticipate will be needed, but in the event that Dan or one of his colleagues would need to travel to woo a prospective partner, I guess, it does allow for no more than $2,000. And so that's really the proposal with an 18% commission to them for what they are able to secure for us. I can tell you that the companies in the proposals that we received last year ranged between 18% and 25%, and so it's right in there. Our current agreement with the Ford Wyoming Center, which of course is a long-term contract and relationship that we've been in for a while, is 15% for the Ford Wyoming Center in Hogadon Basin ski area. So not completely out of line, and again, we incur no costs, only some revenue. So with that, I would entertain any questions that you have.
Zulema, it seems to me that if we're paying 15% on the Ford Wyoming Center, that it would not be appropriate to give someone else 18% or 20% or 24%. Seems like 15% is our number. Why should they get more as opposed to, even that to me is extremely high. You could sell $1 million home or a $100,000 home and only pay 6%. So 15% is more than enough, in my opinion. So I'd like to see us go back and say, you know what, we're already tied in at 15% on another one. We don't want to get away from that out of fairness to them and to the city itself. And I'd be much more comfortable being in the same spots that we're at now. I just don't think that's fair. I don't think we should have just numbers pulled out of the sky and be all over the place. I think we ought to have a number, and that's our number, and that's what we're already using.
Mayor, I guess a point of clarification. So Oakview Group is who we use at the Ford Wyoming Center, and they would also be the company providing this service for us at our other rec
Right,
facilities.
so they're already getting 15% doing it for us now. Why would we give them 18 to continue?
So as I understand it, so right now they have 2 assets to sell. In this particular circumstance, there would be a significantly more work for them to do in trying to potentially sell partnerships for a myriad of facilities. We're talking ice arena, rec center, aquatic center, all of the pools. So the level of work involved in trying to partner on those assets as opposed to just the ski area and just the Ford Wyoming Center, I think is part of the reason. The other part of the reason is, of course, Spectra was purchased by Oakview Group, and Oakview Group corporate partnerships adds a 3% cut of the sponsorships that their staff sell, and so that's where the additional 3% actually comes from. Our original proposal from Oakview Group was 25%, and I came back with a 15% ask to match, and they came back with an 18% request because of the 3% that goes to corporate. And staff felt like that was reasonable, but we can go back and try to negotiate it down.
Well, I understand, and I don't want to micromanage or overstep what you're doing. It was just a question. It seems to me when they have more opportunity, that price should come down, not go up. So that's what's frustrating me. They're going to have a lot more opportunity now. Instead of just 2 buildings, they're going to have 10 to 15 possibly. That price should come down, not go up. Well, it's more work. You're making more money. Of course it is. So, just in the business world, as you're like Walmart, their prices are lower because they have a what do you call it? I call it the Walmart principle, but they have a larger base. Well, that's what we're doing. We're increasing their base for them now, but we're paying them more. It's kind of ass backwards to me, business-wise. So I would like to see you go back at them and say, sorry, we're at 15%. That's what we pay, and you're going to have a lot more opportunity to make a lot more money because you're going to have a lot more buildings to be able to sell the naming rights to. Sir.
Thanks, Ulima, for the information. My understanding when we contracted with Spectra at the time, OVG now, for naming rights for the Ford Wyoming Center, my understanding is that we had very little input in regards to like the selection of that name. And so I'm curious what sort of input, if any at all, will we get in how these other entities are rebranded. My only concern being, I like generating more revenue from our public amenities, but I'm not necessarily interested in like the, Budweiser, Busch, Rec Center, it could be done in a very tacky way. And so I just want to make sure that we can have some degree of influence over what goes on our buildings.
Mayor, Councilor, thank you. So admittedly, I was not part of this team when the Casper Event Center was renamed the Ford Wyoming Center, so I don't necessarily know the level of involvement. However, I do know that in the draft of the potential agreement, should you choose to go that direction, we have final say. So the partnerships are negotiated, and then the city steps in and we agree or do not agree. And we were very clear in our request for proposals and conversations subsequent to that we want it to be tactful. The partner needs to align with the mission of the facility, so that we don't have a situation where we're sponsoring an agency that conflicts with what we're trying to accomplish with our rec facilities. But we would absolutely have final say.
Good to know, thanks.
Mr. Bond.
So I have a couple questions for Lima. So when, say for an example, a new corporate sponsor is identified and they get naming rights for one of our facilities, and they're gonna change the sign on the building, who pays for that, the change in the signage?
Mayor, Councilor, so generally it's part of the partnership agreement that the sponsor pays for any signage changes.
Okay.
However, that can be negotiated. It's a
I see.
partnership agreement, so the vendor or the sponsor could negotiate that we incur the cost out of the revenue generated, particularly if it's a long-term agreement, which these partnerships tend to be multi-year agreements with a dedicated amount that would be received each year.
And just one more follow-up about, so when the amount of money is agreed upon, that's gonna come to the city, does it go into the operational fund of that particular facility only? Or do we have flexibility to use it other places, or?
Mayor, Councilor, great question. I think some of those logistics still need to be worked out with Jill Johnson and her team. But I think it is our intention that the revenue would go to the fund in which the sponsorship was supporting
So if it's-
for the facility,
So it's
correct?
for the Ford Event Center.
Yes,
Echo
and
Stadium.
that being said, we did discuss the fact that where we have opportunities to bundle, right? That's one of the benefits of going with Oakview Group. They already have the Ford Wyoming Center as an asset, they already have Hogan as an asset. And it may be attractive to partners, to corporate partners, to get a little piece of several pies, right? And so the requirement would be that they would report specifically on what was going to each facility so that the revenue could be portioned correctly and applied to the right fund.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilor. Just to add on to what Ms. Lopez responded with, you'll remember probably that indeed whenever we can apply these types of revenue streams or any revenue stream that's new to the respective cost center, whether it's the rec center, the ice arena, or whatever, it does reduce the dependence that it has on the general fund. And so in a lot of ways, it's impacting the general fund
Yeah.
because it's a general fund dependent cost center.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so yes, it does go into the respective area, but the reality is it's a direct benefit to the general fund.
Yeah, and it's decreasing the dependence that enterprise has on the city budget.
Absolutely,
Yeah, I get it.
on the general fund in particular, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, while you're up, I would like to ask you
Sure.
what your opinion is on the percentages. In other words, what's your take on what I said? When they're gonna have more to deal with now, we shouldn't be paying more. I'd like to know what your thoughts are.
Intuitively, what you're saying makes all the sense in the world, because it's like selling ice. If you got more ice to sell, there's more revenue to take in. The challenge that we have is twofold. Number one, we are going to be competing with a lot of sponsorship requests of a very small basket of folks who probably have the wherewithal to do these kinds of things. And so I think it's going to be quite a hustle, if you will. Probably not a great term, but a lot of work, a lot of legwork and so on, bird dogging and everything else to try to find these types of sponsors that are willing to post their banner, if you will, on any of our facilities. It could be parks, it could be the ice arena, the old ice arena. It could be, any variety of directions they can go. As a point of historic understanding, when we went out for the grand poobah of sponsorship opportunities in the form of the Ford Wyoming Center, we used to call it the Casper Event Center in the old days, we got one response, and it was Ford Wyoming. And it took some doing to try to get that put together. And so I think it's going to take quite a lift to expand our reach beyond Hogan and beyond the event center. Although I would say we have a lot of upside on the Hogan side of things that probably hasn't been tapped, in fairness. So I think council has to be willing to accept the fact that if we go back with a take it or leave it 15%, there's the very real possibility that OVG will say, yeah, we're just not interested. Given that that's exactly what we've been told by 4 other potential partners when we told them 25% is just way out of line. So that's a very real possibility.
Mayor,
Yes, please.
excuse me, if I might add to what the city manager's indicated, one other thing that I considered certainly is that, prior to now, Dan Foot's pretty much been a one-man show, right? He's been responsible for doing the great work that he's done up there to really stabilize the revenue stream. We anticipate that he's going to have to bring in corporate resources to help him in this endeavor, hence the 3% to corporate cut. And so I do believe that Dan's gonna need some help. I don't think that if we want him and his team to be actively pursuing opportunities for us on a regular basis, it's gonna take more staff time than he's probably had to devote to date. And so that's why I do believe that the additional 3% to corporate is fair, considering that he would be using those OVG resources.
Fair enough. Thank you. So, it looks to me like are we looking for direction?
Mr. Mayor, we would appreciate it if council is prepared. If not, we certainly are also prepared on our side to do more homework if council so desires.
Ladies and gentlemen, we certainly have a quorum, so if we'd like to give them direction to move forward with this and trust in our esteemed folks that work for us to say this is a good deal, then all I need is a thumbs up. Kyle, you had something else first, I'm sorry.
No, it's not really relevant. I found it. I was wanting clarification on what the current deal with the Ford Wyoming Center is, and it's $400,000 over 6 years, so point of reference. But considering the fact that we have final say on all of these, I would advocate that we move forward.
Everybody okay moving forward? Okay, there you have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Looks like we're gonna hear from Mr. Beamer, I'm guessing, but we're talking snow plowing. Sir, Mr. City Manager, please take it away.
Bet you 10 to 1 it all winds up on Mr. Rogers' shoulders.
Well, right now it's on the city manager's shoulders, so
Yeah.
have at it, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a request brought forward by council, and it was, essentially initiated by Councilor Kathy, appropriately so, to have what I would consider sort of a debrief with respect to our snow plowing season, which, as you all know, was a very heavy lift in more ways than one, right, this past season. And in fact, exceeded our expectations from a budgetary standpoint, certainly from a historic standpoint. This season was one for the books, that's for sure. But the conversation, as I understand it, was really more about not necessarily only debriefing on what our experience was this past season, but perhaps ways in which we ought to look at snow plowing overall, and from more of a holistic approach, what we could be doing differently. And there certainly are a number of models out there that we could discuss, and we would be willing to discuss whatever it is council would like us to look into. I do think it would help to give some time to our practitioners, if you will, to walk you through some of the challenges that they face, and some of the opportunities, perhaps, that they would recommend for council to consider. But without a doubt, if there's a direction council would like us to look into further, that is why we're here, to sort of gain your perspective on things, direction if you have it, and adjustments potentially as you see fit. So with that, Mr. Mayor, if I could turn the time over to Andrew to set that table and
Mr. Beamer.
further, and we'll go from there.
Mayor, Counselor, I told Shad he should take that bet. The good news is, I think we're done with winter this year. So that's the good news.
Now you've jinxed it.
No,
2 more storms now.
no. But as city manager did mention, we haven't had a snow or a winter like this in probably 3 or 4 decades. Not years, but 3 or 4 decades. It started in October, and we've had snow on and off. I mean, we had a long stretch where we didn't have clear streets for a long time. I mean, in some of these residential neighborhoods. We've already exceeded our overtime budget by 50,000, our fuel budget by 100,000, and we've still got 2 months of this fiscal year budget to go through. We're just now starting patching potholes and paving some streets and that kind of stuff. So we still have some fuel to burn through and some materials to go through. But a quick recap of what our snow operation is. I mean, generally before December 1st, we will plow snow to the sites and we won't address it. We'll leave it there to let Mother Nature take care of it, let it melt and go down the way and ultimately into the river. Now, between December and March, when we get generally the heavier snows and the colder temperatures, where we cannot rely so much on Mother Nature's help, we typically windrow those. And when we know there's a significant storm event, we will go to 12-hour shifts right off the bat. So we have crews out there 24 hours a day. Now, not just Shad Rogers' crew, Zalima's crews help clear the city parking lots and all the rec facilities. We also pull in people from water and sewer to man these 13 tandem axles with salters and plows. And we've also got 2 graders and a loader that we will deploy during significant snow events, which we saw numerous ones this winter. And then after March 15th, although this was an exception when we had that snow in April, we will generally plow back to the sites. And we don't typically pick up snow until the snow event is done. And even then, the snow event will be done, but the wind event starts. And it's the same equipment that picks up the snow that plows the streets, so we will have to keep plowing, because otherwise, especially the communities on the outer perimeter of the city, Boots Drive, Goodstein, Whispering Springs, Wolf Creek, they become impassable. And they become impassable very quickly, even within hours of us having run a plow through there. So, Councilor, you may remember several years ago, probably going back 6 years ago, we tried to modify Ordinance 1224, which deals with obstructions in streets and sidewalks, because that is the mechanism by which we use now to try and prevent these commercial lots from plowing their lots and just dumping it into the street, or anybody from dumping, hey, you're creating a hazard. It's very vague and hard to enforce. So at that time, we did bring forth a proposal to modify that ordinance to make it specific, very clear that you cannot dump snow from your property into the city right away. Because ultimately, we have to then address it. We have to pick it up and we have to haul it away, which adds to the overall cost. So I'd like to revisit about the ordinance. We do have a mechanism to declare a snow emergency along snow routes, but right now that includes almost every level A and level B route that we have. We probably need to be a little more selective, because that requires notification of anybody that lives along those streets, requires them to move their vehicles off the street so it does not hinder our snow plowing operations. It gives us the ability to tow them at their expense, which creates some animosity, if you can imagine. If they get their vehicle towed and then they have to pay to get it out of hock. So we have, in my tenure as Public Services Director, we have never declared a true snow emergency. Now, we have asked residents, please move your vehicles off the street. Because some neighborhoods, once we windrow and there's parked cars, those streets become very narrow very quickly. And there's some streets that we simply cannot windrow. Boots Drive is a good example for that. We cannot windrow in that street because it's simply too narrow to begin with.
Indian paintbrush, probably.
Indian paintbrush is probably another good example. So.
Carmel Drive.
Another one, Carmel Drive, that we, if we windrow it, especially during a significant snow event, we may as well just let the snow take course, because it's very hard to travel down those roads with cars parked on the side. So with that, Mayor, I'd open it up to any questions.
Sure, Kyle.
Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, Andrew. Great segue into a question I've been asked multiple times during my couple years on council. What is the benefit, what are the pros and cons of windrowing versus pushing off to the side? I've heard from other people that lived in other places, they preferred pushing off to the side. I wouldn't. 'Cause then if you don't move your car, where are you going? Nowhere. But could you help me glean a little bit our rationale why we prefer to windrow over pushing to the side?
A couple of things, because you're right, Mayor, Councilor, if you push it to the sides, you're invariably blocking in driveways, you're blocking in cars that are parked there, and then they have to dig out, and invariably they dig out, and that snow goes back in the street. And it doesn't melt typically after, between December and into January and February, that snow stays there for a significant amount of time, especially if we've piled it up on the sides. It stays there and doesn't go, and it does deteriorate the curb line and that edge of asphalt. That road will deteriorate quicker at those locations. Windrowing, we don't block the adjacent properties in. It does narrow the streets, but if we don't get the complaints that I can't get my car out, I just shoveled my driveway and you're throwing all the snow back on the side, no, what am I supposed to do? A lot of communities go, you have to dig yourself back out. We take the other approach, we plow to the middle, and when we're done, when the snow event is done, and more importantly, when the wind event is done, then we start picking it up.
Thank you. Follow up if I could.
Please.
Thank you. I also had a question about the roads that we prioritize. Could you explain to me how, so these maps, do we clear every single level A route before we touch any level B routes, or is there, how do you make the most efficient route so that you're minimizing drive time, you're minimizing going back over the same road twice to get to the other side of town kind of thing? Like, could you explain a little bit more about the priorities and kind of what philosophy you guys use?
Mayor, Councilor, very good question. The A routes are generally your arterials and collector streets that we prioritize just so that emergency vehicles and general business can continue to move forward. I mean, your second streets, your poplars, your all those that you think of, man, I get on that street and now I can move. So we will address those first throughout the community. And if it's windy, you may not see us leave those streets for quite a while. And then we will branch out into the B routes. And we won't touch what we call the school level Bs. If school's not in session, they won't get touched. But if school's in session, unless the school has decided to close, those will also become a priority for us, just so the kids can get there safely on the school bus.
Thank you. So level A routes are all the red routes. We hit those and we stay on those until they're clear before we drop down to level B.
Mayor, Councilor, I'll defer to Shab, but that's pretty much, our priority is always going to be level A.
Mayor, Councilor, that's pretty much right. So just feedback with kind of how my day starts when we're in our snow meeting. So I meet with the school district, Mills, Trunk County Emergency Services, everybody that plays within the storm. So we have discussions of where are we at with the storm? What do we need to focus on? Are there buses that need to make alternative pickups from any what we're doing in there? But so when we initially start, we'll just say a 4 a.m. shift. We will hit those A's, but we'll tie in those school routes if we deem that we can get schools going, school buses going in a safe manner. So we're picking up on some of those school route B's just as quick as we're picking up on the A levels. And then once we get all the schools taken care of, we'll finish off with whatever A's we have left. And then that's when we'll continue into our B routes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cathy?
First of all, I win. You did defer to him.
Mayor, Council, point.
That isn't what you said, actually. You said 90% of it's gonna be him.
He said he would.
He's only responsible for about 7%
Okay.
at this point, so.
Okay. But anyhow,
You're welcome, Andrew.
I was the
I
one
got
that
you.
brought this up. And some of the things that you have mentioned that we have not been doing were some of the things that I didn't realize were there. And that was actually, like on the A routes, declaring them emergency snow routes, and you move your cars and you plow them to the side, because we're spending a ton of money picking up snow and having to go out and lease spots to be able to dump the snow. And it does melt. And out of all of the places I've lived, This is the only place that I've ever seen that they pick up snow. And you're right, you may have to go out and shovel a couple of times when the plow comes by, but that's part of winter. And unfortunately, I feel like the people in Casper have just been spoiled over the years. There's no other way I can say it. And we need to figure out a better way of trying to handle the snow, because it is gonna snow. And
Well, I can tell you, Steve, Lander and Riverton pick up their snow. And if you tried plowing this last snow that we had, this 37.3 inches to the side, nobody, unless they've got a jacked up truck like Steve Friel, is getting out of their driveway. And I mean nobody. And I had to pick up Jenna one day coming down and to bring her down to council because she wasn't getting out of her garage either. But if we plowed the sides, it would practically be impossible for some people to dig out, literally. So I do understand why we windrow. I think it's almost a necessity in some areas. So, and I understand it costs money, but I mean, that's what our taxpayers are paying for. They're paying for the ability to get out of their driveways as well. And if we plow out all the sides, I'm afraid we're inhibiting them in their ability to do so. Emergency wagons, ambulances, how are they supposed to get through 3 feet of snow to get into a house to get to somebody? I just, I don't know. To me, it makes sense that we do it the way we do it. And we don't do it on all the roads. We just do it on some that are vitally important. I don't know. You're lucky, I guess you don't live in town, and if they shove 3 feet of snow into your driveway after you shoveled it, I just can't imagine.
they don't plow my road. I have to drive through 3 feet of snow, and that's gonna happen. And I've lived other places that, as a kid, I had to go out and shovel driveway every time the plow came by.
Right, but like Andrew said, the problem is then where do they throw the snow when they're digging out to get their car out? It goes right back in the street.
I'm not gonna sit here and debate that.
I'm just saying what he said.
And that's fine. But by the same token, they don't have to throw it back in the street. And I definitely want them to start enforcing, you don't plow to the streets. Because I can drive right down 21st Street between Cornwall and the Circle and see at least 3 to 4 houses that you can tell they've pushed it into the street because there's the extra big pile out there. And we need to stop that. And we had how many complaints about commercial companies plowing commercial places into residential driveways and into the alleys to where we can't get it, or where we can't get our service trucks down the alleys. So something needs to be done, and we need to be a little more proactive about it.
I'm with you, and that's what this discussion is for. So if you've got some ideas, by all means, hang on. Randy first, please.
New to this, I haven't lived in a lot of places that plowed, and I lived on 12, so I didn't have to deal with any of this. But now that I've moved, off-street parking, if you're plowing it onto the side of the streets, where am I going to park?
Mayor, Counselor, if we're plowing on the side of the streets and we declare a snow emergency, you're going to pull into your driveway, or you're going to get off the street onto a street that's not part of the snow route.
So essentially, I'm not.
And
Okay, I'll take the windrow. It is my bad. I have too many children.
but then they plow the
they can't
street,
park in my
and
driveway.
then you can park right back on the street, and it's plowed.
But if they're just putting it to the side and not picking it up, isn't it going to be in my parking spot?
Not necessarily. All along 12th Street, all along 13th Street, through the one-way sections, there's the parkways. All the way across 21st Street from the roundabout to Cornwall. There's parkway all along there. You can plow it onto the parkways.
I don't live there anymore.
And then,
Now I
but
live
that's
in a
fine. But I mean,
street that-
you've got to start thinking outside the box. Because if it sits on the parkway, all you're doing is watering the dandelions.
Carter, I'll get to you, Con.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Just to be clear, we potentially could be talking about two separate things here. We certainly aren't recommending that we necessarily abandon windrows and that kind of thing, but we do have a provision in the ordinances currently that allows for a snow route declaration that doesn't necessarily change plowing to the side or windrowing. It just allows us the opportunity to have full access to the street so that we can do whatever direction you would like us to go, whether it be windrowing or plowing to the side. they don't have to be mutually exclusive. So there really is two separate directions we can take here that don't have to require one over the other.
Mr. Gamros.
Thanks, Bruce, and thanks, Carter, for that distinction.
Yeah.
I don't want to distract from the point you just made, which it sounds like we need to make a decision, perhaps not tonight, but we need to decide whether we're actually going to enforce the snow emergency route provisions that we have in our ordinance. I was hoping this could be another opportunity for me to be the man on my front yard shaking my fist at my neighbors that snowplow into the street. Do we have any ordinance on that at all? I would love to, we do?
But there's no teeth in it. Can we have it enforced?
Mayor, Councilor, it's weak. I would say that ordinance is weak. And it probably needs a little more teeth to it to make it enforceable.
Can we put that on a future work session, maybe in the fall?
Please.
So that we can kind of shore that up because I know we do have an ordinance that you're not allowed to take the snow off your property and push it out in the street. But it's, like he said, it lacks the teeth to really, to do anything. So if we could revamp that maybe this fall and give people a clear-cut idea of what's expected, I think that would be better. And then we'd have a better opportunity to enforce as well.
You bet.
Mayor, Councilor, I think right now the language is you cannot create an obstruction. And they, if you, and the argument well, there's already snow in the street is the argument we get. And it's gonna melt.
Probably a fair argument.
So, but invariably, we have to take care of it.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, that becomes really critical when we're talking about big commercial lots. And they take all that pavement and all that snow accumulation and pile it into a windrow to make it easy for city. And it actually doesn't. It actually creates quite a bit more work and quite a bit more concentration in those areas where it shouldn't have to.
Sure.
I would suggest that we move it up instead of being in the fall, more towards the middle of the summer. So then as fall starts coming along, we can start notifying people earlier that these changes have been made.
When I said fall, I was thinking August. I want to get through budgets and get into the new fiscal year. But certainly if we could maybe find a spot for that in August sometime on a work session, good point, Steve. Thank you. But I was thinking the same thing you were. I was just thinking later after.
Not a problem. Yeah, we need to get past budget.
Fair enough. Okay, anything else for snow removal for Mr. Beamer? No?
I'm happy.
Okay.
You've answered my questions and the council is now aware of where I was coming from. So
Good deal.
I appreciate that. Thank you all.
Mr. Beamer, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
We're only going to have you for what amounts to about 5 more weeks. So I just hope that you start, like my dad used to say, before your mom paddles, you stick that pot holder down in there because we're coming after you. We got 5 weeks left to get our pound of flesh, so.
Mayor, I was happy to see August on the calendar.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Mr. Mayor, do you mind if I ask a clarifying
I
question?
don't at all.
Before we move from that
I don't at
topic. So would council like to see more homework on the declaration side of things from the snow route perspective? It sounds like we aren't really interested in moving away from a windrow system that we're working on now. But I didn't get a lot of feel as to whether or not we need to talk more about the snow declaration side of things.
Definitely the snow the latter that you mentioned. But I would just as soon, I would really appreciate council and even street department considering and looking and maybe thinking about what they may be able to do or interested in being able to plow more streets to the side. Because I know even on some of the streets we windrow, if then they turn around and park on the part of the street that's been plowed, you're still messed up trying to get around them because they're parked on the street and the windrow's there. And if you drive a dually pickup, you're either gonna run over that windrow or you're gonna sideswipe the parked vehicle. So that presents a problem as well.
No, we can certainly.
And if they hadn't moved when it was plowed, it really narrows it all down.
We could certainly address that, I'm assuming, in come August.
Oh, we
Yeah.
certainly can.
And I know that
Absolutely.
we're also gonna talk about, well, I guess that was it, so, yeah. Fair enough.
Okay. Sound good? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council meetings during Project Safe Build, which is currently going on as we are moving, some or part of the offices have already been moved. We're currently moving the rest of them, so, sir.
Yes, sir. You are right. It is a hustle and bustle over here in terms of getting people relocated to the CBC. And we appreciate the support, by the way, for Project Safe. It's going to be a very needful project that we're excited to get done. A part of that, though, also impacts the way you all engage with each other and the public in the form of your council meetings and so on. And so we have a recommendation that we'd like you to consider for that aspect of this operation, your operation. Council meetings need to be held in a different location for probably 13 months. We have evaluated a number of locations and have settled on a recommendation in the form of having your meetings at the Lyric in one of their theaters, if you will. They have agreed as a part of this arrangement, if you agree and think it's an appropriate direction, to not only house your regular meeting, but your work sessions. They can give us space for executive sessions when we need to break out, if you will, from the theater. They've also been willing to accommodate the kitchen needs that we rely upon to appropriately facilitate your meetings, and so on. And so if you have additional questions pertaining to how this works and what it looks like, we've got Zulema primed up to help you through some of those details. But that's the punchline, basically, with regard to what we're looking for tonight.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions for you. One is, does that room then, or that theater, have to be set up every single week, or does that become ours, it stays there, or are we gonna have a labor-intensive situation every single week of trying to set it up for meetings?
Yeah, great question. As it is proposed right now, it would be dedicated space to the city of Casper. We could set up our equipment, it would be locked down between our uses, and there would be no need to reset each time. The only exception to that would be if we foresee a larger capacity need, then they would move us into one of the larger theaters, and then there may be some resetting necessary.
Along those same lines, the theater aspect of it with the stage and then the audience would be similar to what we have here. What are they planning on for our work sessions? Would that be that same scenario, or because we've decided that it's better to have work sessions around a table like this than sitting on a Diaz, so to speak, out
And
there.
that is a fair point, but unfortunately, because of the situation we're in and the fact that all this is going to be being remodeled, we're kind of going to be in that situation, unfortunately.
Mayor, Councilor, though, I think that we do have some flexibility, and during work sessions could set up a more round table collaboration space, as opposed to during a regular council meeting, we could configure the tables to where you're sitting in a more DS type configuration. So I think we have total flexibility to configure it however is more conducive for you.
Okay,
We'd also probably want to look at the labor intensity to it, the cost effectiveness of rearranging tables every other week. I guess we could just see how it goes. We've certainly had work sessions out there, and unfortunately, it's just a situation that it's going to be new to all of us for a minute.
depending on how big the tables are and how many of them there are. Hell, I'll
Right.
come in 15 minutes early and move tables around.
There you go.
So-
When will this, when would this be happening, I guess is a good question.
Mr. Mayor, pursuant to your direction, we would suggest that the first meeting in June would be at the new location.
Okay. What does that do for So pre-meetings, everything would be in there. So the only thing that would change would be the leadership meetings, and we'd probably have them across the street, I'm guessing, starting in June.
You betcha, unless you'd just simply rather do it at the Lyric, that's available too.
That conference room up where you're at is
Absolutely.
probably just fine.
Absolutely, we certainly could.
And you should, when you get a time, since we have extra time, should probably take a tour of the new the city manager's offices. They're on the mezzanine floor. Very nice, set up very nicely. So Jolene's up there, Carter,
Mayor's office.
Christopher, the mayor's office, Rachel, thank you. Rachel's up there and then the new gal. So they're Crystalline, though, and Renee's right out front. So it's really nice. It's working out well. I believe the city attorneys moved today. We're on the mezzanine floor. They will be on the 7th floor? 6th floor. So we're gonna have people kind of all over the place for a while. I know IT is,
Mayor.
they're at the Ash Street building, and you folks are 5th floor, so it's kind of all over right now, but like I said,
I'm assuming we will ultimately get a scorecard.
to let you know where everybody is. I would think so. I would think that would be appropriate for sure.
We can do that, yeah, absolutely.
So we've got about, looks to be about 3 more meetings here, and then we'll be moving to the Lyric, if that's okay with everybody. I'm assuming budgetarily, we're appropriately set up that way for that as well.
Yes, sir.
And we'll all have to take a field trip, figure out where we go in and all that good stuff. But, so is everybody okay with that? Thumbs up? If so, okay. There you have it. Easy enough, huh?
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, agenda review, which includes we will be rescheduling the 4th of July meeting.
It probably would make sense, wouldn't it?
Unless y'all want to come into my backyard barbecue, and we could do it right there, but I'd rather we don't do that. Sir?
Yes, sir. That's the thick of it. Council has the option of rescheduling that meeting. It could be the 5th, it could be the 6th, it could be the 3rd. It depends on what you want to do. It is helpful to have it at least that same week so that we can keep the bills and claims rolling and on an appropriate time frame, if you will.
Steve just put up a 5 as in the 5th, which I would agree to too, because that is generally, I believe the 4th is on a Tuesday, so that would give us a 4-day weekend, and I'd hate to have to break up any of the family stuff that you might have going on a 4-day weekend. So if we could do it the 5th, which is generally the day people go back to work, it would probably work best for everyone, I'm thinking. Is everybody else on that train of thought?
We also don't get packets till the preceding Friday, and sometimes I need Monday to get through, so I would not
Agreed.
want to move it earlier, certainly later.
Okay, so can we, everybody okay with the 5th? Okay,
Very good.
that was easy.
Hey, that's wonderful.
All right, now let's hit that agenda review, good buddy.
Just to kind of give you a heads up, we anticipate quite a bit of public involvement in tonight's meeting. And that will likely come during the portion of the open mic, if you will, comments from those present sort of area of the agenda. You will notice that there is some script changes as it relates to the rules of that portion of the meeting. And I would recommend that probably be our standard moving forward, given some of the inconsistencies that perhaps the previous scripting had with regard to the actual empowering resolution that councils before you have passed previously. And so, yes, tonight's deliberation undoubtedly helped us sort of look at these issues with a little more, finite of a microscope, if you will. But truly, I think will better serve the council in terms of some of the exposure that potentially you could have during those kinds of exchanges with the community. Eric, would you like to address some of those tonight in preparation for this, or how would you like to?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Please, that's okay.
Manager. So I did have an opportunity to go back and look at your former city attorney, Mr. Henley's research on these issues pertaining to public comment periods. also took a look at our council handbook and the resolutions that we have adopted governing that. And so we have worked to kind of get those, what the law is in a resolution in sync with the script. I think some of this might be appropriate for an executive session at some time in the near future. I know we've got new members on the council, and so it might be a good refresher for some and a good first blush for others to just kind of know what the legal framework is. So, you know, I'm happy to do that at the council's pleasure. I think for tonight, though, you'll see those changes. And I think it's, you know, the one thing that is very clear, and you'll see that as well, it's an opportunity for the public to voice their views to you all. You have an opportunity to ask clarifying questions, but it's not an opportunity or a time to enter into a back and forth or debate on any topic. And that's very clear in our resolution. So happy to take any specific questions at this time, but I think probably generally a broader overview would be appropriate in an exec session.
And the reason he brings that up is because in the past, when someone would make a comment or ask a question, then we would, you know, we get into the whole, it reminds me of when Tim was here over the Second Amendment gun and we're having a discussion and literally it's against our rules to do that. So if you have a clarifying question for someone that's speaking, you are certainly welcome to ask it. But that's kind of as far as it goes. And even just to also further clarify, council comments will be, you know, you have your opportunity at the end during around the table, and that's where you may want to rebut or have a discussion, you know, in open air, I guess, concerning some of the things you may have heard that evening. But that is the appropriate place for that to happen. The other thing that has changed is unless they're inciting violence or threatening, they can say anything they want up there. So our old verbiage used to say no personal attacks on staff or council members, and actually they can, as long as it's not threatening and it's not inciting the crowd to get wily. They can, that's their time, they get to use it how they want. One of the things that was mentioned was if we have an abundance of people, we do have the right to move that speaking time down from 5 minutes to 3 minutes, because we used to also say no duplication of speakers. That is also against our rules. You can have 12 people get up for 5 minutes and say the same exact thing over and over and over again if that's what they want to do. So we do have one option of changing the amount of time that we give them at the microphone from 5 minutes to say 3 minutes if we have a very large crowd. Because I can tell you, 5 minutes, if you get 50 people talking, that's 250 minutes. You can do the math. We're going to be four plus hours. So it's entirely up to this body. But that is probably a decision that should be made. Like tonight, I'm anticipating a very large crowd. If you want to speak, let them have their 5 minutes. I'm okay with that. It's entirely up to you folks. I know Kyle had expressed in leadership that he did have some people call him and said, hey, I want to speak tonight. You know, how much time do I get? And he said, you'll have 5 minutes. So for us to go back and cut it to 3 minutes now might put egg on him or infuriate someone else that already thought they had 5 minutes. So if you guys are okay with leaving it at 5, we can do that as well. Sir.
Thanks, Bruce. And that was my concern, is I had a lot of people reach out to me, want to present, so I wouldn't want them feeling like they got hoodwinked or anything like that. However, I would also be supportive of you taking maybe a roll call vote of the audience, getting an idea of hands, how many people intend on speaking. If it's the whole room, I would be okay with 3 minutes if it's 20 people. You know, I'm all right sitting around for a while. But we talked about this in leadership, and I'm really supportive of this push for this because I've only been on council 2.5 years, but I've seen multiple instances of where we took an opportunity that was supposed to be simply asking clarifying questions, and it turned into a rebuttal or an argument. My experience with those situations was not good ones because I felt like decorum often falters. Things start getting out of control very quickly sometimes. And then also somebody that was supposed to have only gotten 5 minutes, they're up there 10, 15 minutes because now we're in a back and forth. And so, especially when we have a lot of people out here, I am a fan of these changes, and I would also advocate that yeah, we just reserve our comments till the end unless you have a kind of an objective clarifying question about comments that were made by speakers. Otherwise, it's only gonna stretch our night out even further.
What I will do then is, right before we start the public comment, I will ask for a show of hands on how many folks would like to speak tonight. And if we see an overabundance of hands, then I may ask for a 3-minute, and it'll require 5 of us to say yes. And if it doesn't seem like there's that many, then that's
Mr. Mayor, I think that would be fine. I would be happy if, upon the show of hands, if you're inclined to ask for that vote, I'm happy to explain the basis in our resolution that allows us to contemplate.
and I would
3
probably
minutes.
turn to you and ask you to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. The other thing I would just add and clarify, I think everything you said was spot on, with the exception that they can certainly make comments about individual electeds, but they can never be obscene. So they can say, hey, you guys are a bunch of clowns, but if they start breaking out, 4-letter words, then that's never appropriate. Even the clown comments, if that starts to incite disruption in the room, we can declare that to be
Thank you. Could I ask for one more point of clarification on the duplication of comments? My understanding in leadership was that the reason you had issue with that was because it becomes very subjective about whether somebody's actually duplicating comments or not. But if we had I don't even know if this, this may never happen, but if we had a line of a dozen people up there wanting to read a form letter verbatim, word for word, I hope we would have some flexibility to be able to maybe cut that off or.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilor, so you kind of get into that gray area. And so it's a designated public forum and it gets strict scrutiny. And so any time that you're cutting somebody out because it's duplication, then you're talking about the content of the speech. And so content regulation is really never constitutionally permissible. And so you want to stick with time, manner, place restrictions. So, but it even gets more complicated because we allow a public comment period for folks to come in and speak to anything they want. So there's no restriction. It doesn't even have to be city business, for instance. Then it's harder to regulate that. But if we said, hey, you can come and you can speak to any pending item on the agenda or something like that, then you've maybe changed the nature of the forum and then you have more ability to regulate duplication, repetitiveness. And so I think, based on what I've read in the files, I think these are discussions that this council in the past has had and kind of landed where we're at. And so I think it's certainly at your pleasure, a discussion we can have again. I can give more of this background, and then if the decision is made to maybe change the way we do it, we can certainly look at that.
One of the things we can get caught up into is if I ask for a show of hands and only 10 people raise their hand, and all of a sudden 50 people decide they're gonna speak, they're all gonna get their 5 minutes, so keep that in mind. And I'm not opposed to that. Like I said, it is what it is, so. After the meeting is over tonight and we've done our council around the table, we will convene back in here for an executive session. And then we'll be excused after that. So do you have anything else on agenda review?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Folks, we've got about 12 minutes, so. Absolutely. I'm always happy to. Oh, hey. Don't forget to do your homework on the 1 cent so that next week we don't burn a ton of time on that. Okay, thank you. Oh, hi, Jake. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the April 4th, 2023 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star on April 29th, 2023.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Haskins, seconded by Councilor Gamroth. Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. And please record the vote. Up, Kathy, okay, thank you. Please record the vote.
Counselor Kathy abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the April 4th, 2023 executive session. Moved by Councilor Gamroth, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair would I'm sorry, sir, did you want to abstain for that?
No, I screwed up on the previous one. I was here for the April 4th meeting, so that should have been a yes vote.
Can we change the abstention to a yes vote, please? Thank you, thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the April 18th, 2023 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star on April 30th, 2023.
Also.
Moved by Councilor Jensen, seconded by Councilor Haskins. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
Counselor Kathy abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the April 18th, 2023 executive session. Moved by Councilor Jensen.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Gamroth. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote. Please record the vote now.
Counselor Kathy abstaining and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve by minute action the May 2nd, 2023 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Haskins, seconded by Councilor Kathy. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. We'd like to welcome members of the Casper Community Tennis Association to the meeting tonight. Please come forward, introduce yourselves at the lectern, and discuss Tennis Month, if you would, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Angela Emery. I'm the secretary for the Casper Community Tennis Association, and I'm joined this evening by several of my other board members, and we're here to thank you so much for proclaiming May as National Tennis Month. In addition to this proclamation this month, we are partnering with the Natrona County Library on a tennis lending program whereby folks can check out books about tennis and also rackets and balls that will be available throughout the summer for those interested in trying the game. We'll also be hosting a free tennis carnival on Saturday, May 20th at the 307 Tennis Club. This is a free event. We invite you to come, check it out. If you've never tried tennis, this is a perfect opportunity. I wanted to share that tennis is booming nationwide. The number of people playing tennis in 2022, 23.6 million, is more than the combined number of people playing pickleball, badminton, racquetball, and squash combined. Pretty amazing, because those pickleballers, you'd think that they were the most. We love pickleballers. Tennis players add nearly 10 years to their lives over sedentary individuals, and studies show that tennis is better for cardiovascular health than other traditional sports. Tennis is good for the economy as well. Casper played host to USTA League last weekend. Teams came from Jackson and Cheyenne to compete, and we'll be hosting another team event on June 9 and 10 with players coming from all around the state. The Casper Community Tennis Association looks forward to the completion of the NCSD High School Tennis Complex and future work at Washington Park, with our long-term goal of bringing state tennis to Casper in 2025. Again, thank you so much for proclaiming May as National Tennis Month. And we'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Zulema Lopez and her whole staff for being so considerate about our tennis facilities. Thank you so much.
Before you leave, if you don't mind, I'd like you to come up. We'll read the proclamation, and I'll give it to you if you'd like. Is that mine, maybe? Whereas the UTSA, founded in 1881, is the nonprofit national governing body for tennis in the United States and leads the promotion and growth of the sport at every level of play from beginners to professionals at the U.S. Open. The USTA, which has over 550,000 members across the country, proudly partners with local tennis programs such as those offered by the City of Casper Recreation Division and the Casper Community Tennis Association to showcase the important health, social, and educational benefits of tennis and make the sport available to everyone regardless of age, environment, condition, or ability. The latest research by the Physical Activity Council shows that more than 23.6 million Americans played tennis in 2022, an unprecedented 33% increase in participation over 2019, and the highest number of players since the PAC study began in 2007. By increasing the accessibility of tennis for citizens of Casper in all ages and ability, the USTA, CCTA, and the City of Casper Recreation Division have contributed to making our community happier and healthier. Now I, Bruce Nell, the Mayor of the City of Casper, Wyoming, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as National Tennis Month and encourage players, organizations, and facilities to promote local programs and activities at parks and facilities throughout Casper to showcase tennis and spread the word about the sport and its benefits, and to help players and non-players alike find courts and play opportunities in their communities. In witness hereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the official seal of the City of Casper, Wyoming to be affixed this second day of May 2023. Now is the time we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. This portion of the meeting is dedicated to the public to allow them time to voice their concerns. Therefore, council will take communications under advisement. If they choose to respond, they will do so at a later time. Please state your name. Direct all questions and comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal obscenities or threats will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to the city manager. If council chooses to address these matters, it will be done during the introduction of measures and proposals by members of the council. That'll be at the end of the meeting tonight. Presentations will be limited to, before I say, how many folks in the audience tonight would like to or plan on speaking? Please raise your hand. We okay with 5? Okay. Thank you for that. Presentations will be limited to 5 minutes and no time extensions will be permitted. Please note that public hearings and ordinances each have their own comment period, so hold those comments on those items until we reach them. Ma'am, the floor is yours if you would please state your name.
My name is Jane Ifland. I live at 406 East 8th Street in the middle of Ward 1. I want to thank you all for your services in public office. This is a significant sacrifice. You sacrifice not only your time, but also your right to say anything you want to anyone you want, at any time you want, in any venue you want. Someone is always listening. And to sustain your legitimacy in office, you must avoid egregious, unnecessary provocation. As we see in this moment, that can be challenging. You represent the views who chose you to help govern this city, but your decisions and actions impact all residents. This tension between representation and leadership confronts everyone making decisions in government. I ask that you find the ways to be circumspect in office, and I urge you to lead toward kindness and reject judgment. I want to make sure that we all understand the critical importance of keeping religion out of government and vice versa. No other factor has been the cause of more strife and division in all of history. It's important that elected officials respect others' opinions and beliefs, and even more important, that governance not be founded in that division and strife. On a more personal note, I am appalled that anyone purporting to represent me would dare to stand in judgment of me. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the floor is yours if you would please state your name. Thank you.
My name is Holly Waddy Thompson, and I also live in Ward 1. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. I'm a proud resident of Casper, and I'm also a board member for Wellspring Health Access. I'm not here tonight to advocate for abortion rights, okay? Or try to convince anybody of anything tonight, other than I'm here to defend Wellspring's right to operate safely and free from fear. I've lived in this community for many, many, many years. And one of the things I love so much about it is the care we extend to each other. The kindness and small town feel that makes everyone in Casper feel connected. We may vote differently. We may go to different houses of worship, or we may not worship at all. However, in Casper, we respect one another and each other's differences. On Thursday, April 21st, Wellspring finally opened its doors in Casper. Nearly a year after an anti-abortionist arsonist set fire to the building at a cost of nearly $300,000 in damage. That same evening, in response to a news article about the clinic opening, Mayor Nell posted a picture of a fire on social media. For the mayor to post an image of fire in response to Wellspring finally open, even if it wasn't directly alluding to the arson, is careless and cruel. Casper deserves better. This isn't about abortion. It's about violence. No matter how you may feel personally about abortion, no one has a right to burn down a building because of it. To joke about it in any way is in poor taste and minimizes the real-world violence that clinics like Wellspring face and still continue to face today. The mayor of Casper reflects the community. His inflammatory post cannot be used to represent Casper, our values, or the spirit of this community. We ask the mayor to apologize and for a commitment from the City Council to ensure that Wellsprings has a right to operate safely. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, the floor is yours if you would please state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Manager Napier. I really respect all of you for serving here. I know what it takes to sit on that side of the table up there, and I really truly respect all of you for giving forth the community efforts that you do. First of all, my reason in coming here tonight is to address you with regard to a very good friend of a lot of us, Doug Follick, who tragically passed away here recently. Everything that Doug did in his entire life, he did all the way. From being a Green Beret Army medic to being a paramedic here in Casper, director of the ambulance program here, working as an HR director both for the hospital and for the city of Casper, and serving as director of Parks and Leisure, and we always referred to him as Leisure One because he was a guy that knew how to have leisure. And I see Councilman Kathy smiling at that. And for his service on City Council. Doug was a great guy, and he died rather tragically. And I would ask that you recognize that with a moment of silence, but don't take it out of my time. The other reason, Mr. Mayor, I'm here is to address these comments to you. I will defend to the death the right of anyone to have differing opinions on anything. It's not a matter of how you feel about one certain issue or another. But when you serve in an office such as mayor, city councilman, anything like that, people listen, they pay attention. And the inflammatory, literally inflammatory things that you put out there on social media was wrong. You owe the people of the city of Casper a profound apology for that, not for your position or opinion on any issue, but for the manner in which you spoke. I think about the tragedy when Timothy McVeigh blew up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma, killed 186 innocent souls. There were a lot of, responsible, in quotes, political officials then, saying, oh, that our government is just terrible and all this stuff and people should take action and everything. And Timothy McVeigh, I don't know if he took his cue from any of that or what, but he thought, well, it's okay to go blow up a federal building and kill 186 innocent people. I worry that when somebody sees someone such as yourself, Mr. Mayor, posting a building burning down, along with the comment about your opinion, which you are most assuredly entitled to have, and I would fight for the death to defend your right to that opinion. But posting something like a fire like that is just literally inflammatory, and it was very much wrong. And I would hope that you recognize that and would apologize to the people of Casper and everything. And I do also want to take just a second. I'm really happy to see you up and around after the horrible injuries that I know you suffered, and I'm sure that you're still suffering some. Tell your lovely wife that I wish her well too, and I hope she's getting around as good as you are.
Thank you.
And I do thank all of you guys.
Thank you. Please state your name, ma'am, and the floor is yours.
Tasha Blackburn. Good evening, Council. Good evening, Council.
Your mask is muffling it pretty substantially. If you could remove it just to speak, it might help. It's up to you.
Good evening. Is that better? I am here tonight to address Mayor Nail's problematic actions of inciting and praising violence while commenting his religious point of views in regards to the Wellspring Clinic. I am here to remind you that it is not up to you to attempt to enforce your religious ideals upon others. Your job is to preside over council meetings, provide leadership to this council, and to represent the community at official functions. It is distasteful behavior in general, however, most notably coming from the mayor of our city to applaud a criminal act and support such actions. You are expected, at minimum, to act as a law-abiding citizen. Some may argue that you have the right to privacy. However, you lost the right to privacy when you post your offensive opinions with the intent to sow discord on public forums such as social media, and when you chose to run for a public position within our local government, you influenced the resolution of the issues involved. May I also remind you we have what is called free agency. This is the United States of America, not Iraq. We have veterans and current military members that are fighting for our freedoms and constitutional rights. The First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution states Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, as mayor representing our city elected by constituents of all faiths or none at all. You are still acting as a government entity, whether in person or on social media, publicly commenting on local news articles, not your personal social media. We have the freedom to choose whatever religion we wish to practice, and also, more importantly, the freedom from religion, meaning we have the choice to not practice at all, despite your religious beliefs that you hold so dearly and have stated your views, while as mayor, repeatedly to the public on social media, you continue to inflict damage and harm upon the rest of the constituents of this town by insinuating in your comments that hell is where they will end up and their salvation of God is of your concern, is none of your concern, and is reprehensible. If you want to preach your religious views, save it for your Sunday congregation, not while you are representing our city, whether in person or social media. You are representing the city of Casper, and this is not how I, a citizen in Casper, personally wish to be portrayed. There is no place for religion in politics. As people sit in front of the Wellspring Clinic, harassing people that are making a personal healthcare choice for themselves in regards to what is best for them, your posts and comments only further escalate the growing tensions as you approve of these actions committed by thugs. This isn't the flex you think it is. The choice to receive healthcare at this clinic does not involve nor affect you personally. Their personal choices do not endanger your life. It doesn't physically affect your way of living, but disallowing people to have access to healthcare options that are best suited for them can endanger their lives depending on their circumstances. That choice is up to that individual and their healthcare provider, not you. If you cannot and will not attempt to lead this city, which you have shown repeatedly through your actions that you will not, without your religious viewpoints impeding your judgment, separating church and state while advocating for and praising violence against our city's people, businesses, livelihoods, while interrupting how this city is governed, as a constituent currently residing in Ward 1, I am calling for your resignation effective immediately. Thank you.
Good evening.
Please state your name.
Mayor, City Council, my name is Tim. Last name is Powell, just like Powell, Wyoming. I'm a resident in Ward 2. I wanted to come here tonight. I'd intended on writing down a speech, but I unfortunately was limited on time this evening, so I'm going to just kind of shoot from the hip here. First and foremost, what I would like to say is simply this. We need to remember that we live in a constitutional republic, not a democracy. And as a constitutional republic, that entitles each and every one of us, regardless of your position in government, to hold your own personal, religious, lifestyle views. And we need to respect that. Yes, I understand that you are the mayor of this city, but that does not mean you have to separate your duties as mayor from who you are as an individual. You are here to represent us. We have elected you to do so. And in doing so, that part of what our election was based on is your morals, your personal opinions, your religious views, as we have all come to know you. I don't know you personally, Mr. Mayor, but at the same time, I respect your office and I respect this council. It is important to realize that, yes, while the First Amendment does specifically state no government shall establish a religion, that means the government shall not publicly state, you, Mr. Mayor, could not publicly state that the city of Casper is a Christian organization. That's it. That's all it states. It does not state that you have to separate your religious views and who you are as an individual from your office. You are not promoting Christianity. You are not promoting your views. You have every right as a citizen of the United States, regardless of position, unless that position is specifically constrained by policies, you have every right to voice your opinion. And I appreciate that. And whether I agree with you or not is irrelevant. As my dad told me many, many years ago when I was a kid, you can get offended in the same pants, or you can get unoffended in the same pants that you got offended in. And what we need to realize as a society and as a community is that your views now will carry forward to the next election. Individuals have rights to then vote for you or choose not to vote for you based on what you present yourself to be. This is an avenue better addressed by the state courts. It is important to note that at no point in time has the Wellspring Clinic been denied permits, building, operating licenses, sales tax licenses, or anything else because of their function and what they do. So, this is the opportunity for spirited debate if we choose to operate in such a manner. We need to operate as a constitutional republic. And in the United States of America, in this day and age, I am so appalled by the fact that while there are those that espouse the fact that we need to be tolerant of one another, many times tolerance means that we have to have educated and informed debate and be able to come to a point to agree to disagree without personal attacks. This needs to be a situation where, you know what? Yeah, maybe your comments weren't mayorly. Maybe your comments weren't what people would expect from leadership. But your comments are protected. And your comments and your values should be respected. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name.
Yes, this is Carol Chapin. By the time this rumor had gotten to me, I looked it up on the internet and it had already been removed. So Mayor, you are not in my ward. I don't know anything about you. Never met you. But I will tell you this. I looked it up in Google and there was only one word that was taken out of your statement or something. And I can't repeat it because I don't want to get arrested, okay? You know, I mean, that's the fear here. So I wrote to you because I don't trust the media. I don't trust what they say. I have found them to misinterpret things. And so I wrote to you and I asked you, what is it that you said, or what is it? And you replied back, as mayor, I remain neutral, but as a private citizen, I'm opposed to what abortionists do. To me, that sounds like a very generic government political statement that I get from all of you people. So, but my concern is I had a friend who lived in the building next to Wellsprings. She put some pro-life things in the window, and then she was reported to her landlord, who came up, and they were evicted. And I'm very sad about that. That people who may want to make a statement for one side or the other will get treated violently, and who get treated like they have no right making a statement. Now there's a building right across the street, and there's a pro-choice statement in their window. It was there last year. It is still there today. I checked it. This is confusing, which tells me, I think we got a double standard here. This is my view. I see a double standard in this, in what is going on in our community, and I would like to welcome the media to please investigate my friend who disappeared. It was a woman, and it was a family. She had pictures that were taken on K2, and so you guys got the data. Just go look back for last year. I went to visit her, and she's gone. Her whole family's gone. The apartment is completely gutted. I feel sad that that somebody is being forced to evacuate their home. She's lived there for 20 years because of her views. You know, that shouldn't be happening. So that's all.
Thank you. Please state your name, sir.
Thank you. My name is Kyle True. That was very concerning. I'm sorry for her experience. I'd like to say three things. But before I do, again, this has been said before, but it's sincere. Thank you for taking your time. For you guys to come here, it takes a lot of time. The perks and the pay are not worth the time you're putting in. It's obviously because you care about the community. I also appreciate the open mic. I've been here before. I have yet to persuade you guys to all vote my way. I'm still holding out for that. But I appreciate the open mic because for the citizenry to have a chance to come mid, election cycle and voice our thoughts, I value significantly. Okay, so I'd like to say three things. First, I need to clarify what I understood the mayor's comment to be, because otherwise my remarks might not make any sense. The representation of a fire to demonstrate a concern that the mayor had that someone who participated in abortion might be risking the fires of hell is a completely different understanding. That's my understanding from what I read than many have purported here today. So I just wanted to clarify what I'm responding to, and it may not be the same as what others were responding to, but that's what I understand the comment to be and the symbolism. Not to support arson, not to support danger toward people, not to support violence. In fact, I think it was very clearly stated in the paper that was not the intent. So with that clarification, I'd like to thank the mayor for his expression of kindness and concern. He's either correct.
Order. Folks, we need to be respectful when someone else is speaking, please.
He's either correct or he's not correct. I think we can agree on that. He's either correct or he's not correct. If he's correct, then to not warn someone who is engaged in something that represents significant danger to them is not kindness. So, if a person sincerely holds a belief that someone is doing something dangerous to themselves, a warning, a statement of concern is an act of kindness. So, I take the mayor to be sincere. Therefore, I take that to be a statement of actual kindness to bring clarity to the issue. Which brings me to my third point. It was not a surprising viewpoint or comment. Hippocrates, who lived, call it 400 BC, who did the original Hippocratic Oath, he included in the original Hippocratic Oath that no doctor could perform an abortion or give a woman the means to do an abortion on herself. That was Greek society, call it 2,400 years ago. The Epistle of Barnabas, now we've changed to Jewish and / early Christian. The Epistle of Barnabas also forbade abortion. To find someone today significantly opposed to abortion is not radical or surprising. It's been very recent that the Supreme Court created a farcical constitutional right to an abortion, which has been recently removed. And so now, depending on what happens in the courts in Wyoming, it may become the obligation of these city council members to enforce a ban on abortion, possibly, depending on what happens in the courts, if the law stands as passed by our legislature. At which time, without violence, I hope that you would enforce that law, because we're a nation of laws and not of passion, ultimately. The last thing I'd like to say, I'd like to ask you all who have thrown your hat in the ring to lead our society, would you please be true to yourself and be thoroughly who you are in bringing your convictions to your role, and not try to avoid criticism, but try to provide clarity and leadership. I've noticed, I have boys that are way better athletes than I am, and they play basketball a lot. And when they go out there on the court and try to avoid doing something wrong, they're very ineffective. But sometimes they go out and they try to do something right.
Half a minute.
Then they're effective. And so I would ask you to be wholly who you are, and instead of trying to avoid criticism, which can be found by stating beliefs, instead, please be who you are. And then, as a previous speaker had said, there's another election coming. People can vote again. But the clarity and sincerity that you bring to the office, I think, is more valuable than avoiding criticism. Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Bob Brechtel, Evansville. To tack on to what Kyle says, I think one of the things that we've completely forgotten in society is the natural law. And the founding fathers wrote of this when they established our Constitution, and they said that without natural law, our republic would fail to exist. And so what we have now, I think, is a healthy thing for us to talk about. What do we do in our community? What happens at 918 East 2nd Street? The abortion industry, what does happen there? It's a new business that just opened, and the abortion industry many times across our nation preys on women who really need our help, and that's what we should be there to do, is to help them. A mother is still a mother after the abortion. The Women with Silent No More organizations say that very often women suffer unbelievable loss with an abortion. It's the killing of their child. SCOTUS made it clear last June that the 1973 Roe versus Wade decision was improper, and that there really is no right to abortion. In addition to abortions, this new business is doing transgender, will be doing, if they're not already, affirmation and reassignment. This has proven in many places to bring anxiety and more confusion to those who already are mentally vulnerable. And according to the National Library of Medicine, a recent study shows that 82% of those individuals who become transgenders consider killing themselves. 40% of them have attempted. This is violence to our youth. One would almost question, would this business stay in business if it were not for the money? The transgender business is expected to grow to $5 billion by 2030. According to Planned Parenthood, the average abortion will be somewhere between $700 and $2,000. While this may be profitable, this represents a form of violence in our community that some of us may be quite concerned about. We don't see this as honorable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council.
Thank you. Welcome. Please state your name.
Andy Mosier. I'm standing before you at the city council meeting because in my 20s I had acne and just wanted to feel comfortable in my own skin. Like teenagers and adults alike, acne can affect more than just your self-esteem. In 2016, a friend of mine suggested I try taking Accutane from a dermatologist. She had been on it and stated it had done wonders for her skin. After months of careful consideration, I made my dermatologist appointment to start Accutane. There's counseling appointments and a review of the vast complications that can take place both symptomatically and should anybody get pregnant while on the medication. There's a requirement to join an iPledge program where you take monthly pregnancy tests and have to pledge to use 2 forms of birth control during the course of use. They also discuss the importance of the half-life of the medication after you stop taking it, which can be present for weeks up to a month, meaning that the impacts can be long-lasting. The pregnancy complications which have been confirmed are congenital heart defects with the shape or how the heart functions, missing ears and hearing loss, vision loss or missing eyes, microcephaly where the head is smaller, which can cause intellectual and developmental disabilities, thymus gland issues which can affect immunity, parathyroid issues which can affect calcium absorption, and hydrocephalus fluid on the brain which can cause intellectual disabilities, only to name a few. I remember reading my iPledge booklet, and the thing that stood out to me the most was that the baby's heart can be formed with missing parts, making sustainable life impossible. Before taking my first pill, I had to go in and take a pregnancy test, but little did I know I was already pregnant. But my HCG levels were so low, my pregnancy test came back negative, which was the green light I needed to start the medication that I was so eager to start in order to feel normal in my own skin. I lost my own mother at 15 months old, and it's been a lifelong dream of mine to become one myself. When I found out I was pregnant, the side effects kept flashing before me, and I knew I had to make a heavy decision that many others had to make. I had to get an abortion to save my unborn child from a world of suffering. After stopping the medication, I found myself pregnant again within the window of the half-life of the medication, having to make the same difficult decision for the second time. When a woman must make the difficult decision, she does so for her own necessary reasons. Mine was simply, yet not so simple, because I tried medication for acne. There are a million reasons to make the decision, but no one does so lightly. When Mayor Nell made his comments and is defending them, he is not only damning half of Casper, us women, his constituents, who should have a right to make medical choices within our own bodies, but half of Wyoming and America, and more so to every friend, partner, and family member who has supported women making the decision of abortion. As a mental health therapist, I know how detrimental, hurtful public comments can be on one's mental and emotional well-being. Wyoming being one of the leading states of suicide, suicide is directly related to mental health. Mental health's consequence can be so egregious that it's death. No, his comments didn't break any rules, and there's no handbook on conduct. But he's negatively and maliciously hurt half of Wyoming and their supporters. And because of Nell's consequences regarding his disorderly conduct, how to uphold oneself should be considered into holding a public office. This cannot happen. A leader damning more than half of Wyoming? Nell himself has been outspoken about the psychological toll of holding a public elected position, and he's decided to not run again after his term ends in 2025. What about the psychological effects of all the women before and after him who will now experience more guilt and more shame, more so than they already do, based on the senseless and careless comments? To the City Council who stand for our citizens, what can be done?
Hi, please state your name.
Deborah Cheatham.
Thank you.
Two things. One, just to correct a misimpression, Wellspring Health Services is a nonprofit organization. The second thing that I'd like to say is my concern about the mayor's post was that it has the effect in certain groups of people to encourage and advocate political violence. And that's the reason I object to the comment and think that this city deserves at least an apology.
Welcome. Please state your name.
My name's Mike, Mike Pyatt. Mr. Mayor and members, was that applause for me before I spoke? I wasn't sure, okay. First of all, Mayor Nell, you don't owe me an apology. The comment and the symbolism with which you spoke, I think is appropriate. We're here to, we've been told, and I think we've missed a great deal of what happens and what transpires at the abortion clinic. Snuffing out the life of the unborn is terrible, reprehensible, but we're to pretend that it's women's health. So as long as that persists, I hope Mayor Nell and other members will speak their mind. I think the other part is, last summer, myself and a couple of my colleagues went to the pro-abortion march at the park. And they used to have a sign outside that said, "Love is the language spoken here." I noticed the sign isn't there anymore, so I thank you for taking that down because it's false advertising. That's not love. Killing babies is not love. You can spin what you care to, but it's not true. So I think tonight we just need to make sure we know what we're talking about. Mayor Nell's comment, I thought the symbolic of fire, that's been talked about for 5,000 years. Hell, heaven, people have views on that, and they still talk about it. And for people to not like the comment about hell, number one, it won't make it go away. Number two, it doesn't mean it isn't true. So as we talk about what takes place at the women's health clinic, it's not health. And the women who are put in that position to make that decision, I feel bad for them. And to be lied to about the fact that it's their body is not true. The baby has its own life. So while some are content to continue to promote those lies, we still have to deal with the facts. The fact is, and when we said the pledge tonight, at the end, we usually add for the born and the unborn. A couple of ladies in front of me couldn't figure out what that meant. And that's sad. The fact that they don't understand what that means is why we're here tonight. So Bruce Nell, Mayor, you don't owe me any apology. I thank you for being brave. People that thought it was not as artful as it could have been, to me that's secondary. Telling the truth in this culture is still honorable and brave. So thank you, Mayor and Council.
Please state your name. When you're ready.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, my name is Riata Walker. I've lived in Casper for several years, but I am a Wyoming native raised on my family ranch in northeastern Wyoming. Nothing in life is black and white, and to think that is naive. About 3.5 years ago, my eyes were opened to a reality I never knew existed. My husband and I had to make the hardest decision of our lives for a child we desperately wanted. We had a termination for medical reasons, a TFMR. Medically speaking, we had an abortion. And by the way, Thursday is TFMR Awareness Day. We found out a little over halfway through our pregnancy that our daughter was very sick. We were sent to Denver to maternal fetal medicine specialists and still never dreamed that we would lose our daughter. After further testing and diagnosis and conferring with our doctors, we were presented with our options. None of them involved us bringing our daughter home. Our daughter had rare severe heart defects and chromosomal issues, a fatal diagnosis. I was stunned. I never thought I'd be faced with such a decision. I never thought about the possibility of babies not having a chance at life after birth. This new reality I was living opened my eyes to a reality I never allowed myself to see before. Everything I thought I believed was suddenly flipped upside down. If God doesn't make mistakes, then why was our daughter going to die? Perhaps so that I could stand before you today and ask you to open your eyes and reconsider the reality of this issue, as I have. We were told we could try to carry to term, putting me at greater health risk, or we could terminate the pregnancy either by a surgical procedure, also known as a D&E, or by induced labor, which is what we chose. But again, it's still considered an abortion. When all of your options are terrible, you try to pick the one that will cause the least amount of suffering. We chose to suffer so that our daughter didn't have to. So we induced labor, and she was born early so that she could pass peacefully in our arms. We were able to organize her baptism, and were able to hold her and say goodbye in our own way. Her life was honored in the best way that it could have been, all while my health was the top priority of the medical team. I don't even know how to explain to you what it feels like to go from planning your baby shower to planning how you're going to say goodbye and what to do with your child's remains. What it's like to walk into a hospital pregnant knowing you aren't coming out with a baby. You get home, you pack away all of the baby things you've been collecting because it's just too painful to look at, and you don't know if you'll ever get another baby to use them. And then your milk comes in, and then you have to deal with that pain on top of the grief of losing a child. I'm telling you all of this so that you might understand that these decisions are not made lightly, and they are so complex and unique to each situation. Perhaps quality of life, rather than just life, should be what we value most. Not all aborted babies are unwanted, and not all abortions are done the same way. These are real people facing real challenges, and one size does not fit all. My husband and I had to weigh so many different factors once we knew our daughter's fate. We had to think about our home, our finances, our jobs, our future children that we may have. The list goes on and on. No two families are in the same situation, and while you think you'd have made a different decision, you aren't living their life. There's a quote I picked up somewhere that's always spoken to me. Judgment without context is the worst sort of cowardice. If you take anything away from tonight, I hope that you recognize that the narrative you've been told to believe about abortion fails to include people like me and our stories. It also fails to recognize the amazing medical professionals who have walked beside us during these most heartbreaking and personal moments of our lives. These individuals are providing the care their patients need without judgment because they are the ones sitting face to face with those patients, discussing options, listening to their stories, holding their hands, or even embracing them as their bodies shudder from sheer grief. The doctors, nurses, and staff we encountered were some of the most compassionate human beings I've ever come across. They certainly recognize that no two cases are alike and strive to provide the best care under any and all circumstances. So please reconsider how you view and treat the women and families who've had to make this difficult decision, and recognize that you don't know what all they've had to consider when making that choice, that perhaps they were living a reality that you could never imagine. Please reconsider how you view medical professionals and organizations who provide such care to their patients, that perhaps they have a better understanding of what's best for their patients than you do. And finally, perhaps try practicing more compassion and understanding in your daily life for others. You might be amazed what you will see and learn when you do. Thank you.
Please state your name. Folks, your applause are noted, but there's someone at the podium now. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Sadie Carson. I actually live in Casper now, was born and raised in Glen Rock. I just wanted to speak about this issue. I'm worried about the violence, too, that takes place there. Ripping babies apart inside their mother's womb, limb by limb, that's violent. My situation, I was raised by a single mother who had told me that she had the option to have an abortion with me. And as an adult, when she told me that she chose not to, that was hard to hear. But I'm so grateful that she didn't make that choice and she actually gave me life. And my 4 kids, I'm sure that they're grateful that my mom didn't make that choice to terminate my life. Anyways, I agree with some of these other people that have spoken. You're representing all of us in this community, not just the people that disagree with you. And like has already been said, if I see someone in the middle of the street and a Big Mac truck's coming down the street and about to run them over, I'm not going to just be like, yeah, cool, you're in the street, go ahead and get run over. If I actually believe what I say I believe, I'm going to run out there and try to rip them out of the street and save their life. So I thank you for your comments, and thank you for this time to speak.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address council this evening? Sir, please state your name.
Good enough, Mr. Mayor, council people. Hypocrisy has been mentioned a few times this evening, so I just thought I'd make a few observations on comments where I think they're very hypocritical. You posted a fire burning on a story about a clinic that had been firebombed, and then claimed that you didn't realize what you were doing. I find that a little hypocritical. You reference the Old Testament as a justification for believing in the fires of hell, but the Old Testament, of course, is the Jewish Bible, and unless you're of the Jewish faith and obeying 250 of the laws that are contained within the Old Testament, to me it seems hypocritical to use that to justify your comments. I also think it's hypocritical when you, as reported in the media, and my experience in the media over 40 years has been they're professional, they get it right most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. I noticed you were bemoaning the fact that people are nasty on social media. I think it's hypocritical for somebody who's nasty on social media, or has been, to complain about other people being nasty on social media. Call me crazy. I also think in terms of the pro-life position, I can respect any position that's consistent, coherent, holds together, but I don't find their position to be consistent at all. I think they're hypocritical. A real pro-life position would, number one, teach sex ed extensively to prevent unwanted pregnancies. There would be free contraception to prevent unwanted pregnancies. If a woman did become pregnant, there would be complete prenatal care. If she couldn't afford it, the state should provide it. There should be postpartum care, and the child should be completely supported until the age of 18. That would be pro-life, but it's not. So I find that to be hypocritical as well. So I just hope that in the future, and I realize abortion is not the topic exactly of the day, it's violence. And the founders, we heard about the founders were worried about many things, and one of the big things they were worried about is mob violence. And they were very cognizant of the fact that religious wars bring out the worst in everybody. And so when there's a violent attack on the Capitol, that's mob violence. When there's a firebombing of a clinic in Casper, Wyoming, that's mob violence. So whatever your opinion on any issue, violence is the worst of all worlds. So thank you.
Hi, please state your name.
Sherry Martin. I wouldn't want to be in your position, any of you, really, honestly. Most of the people in the community know my faith, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm a strong believer in the Word. And what I wanted to say is I feel like my role is really speaking truth. I like to represent Jesus as much as I can, and I know that there's two sides to this. That's why I said I wouldn't want to be in your position. I have to make responsible decisions in my life, and the weight of that is very heavy. I feel like I have to serve my God, who also gives me free will. And so at the end of the day, every person in this room has free will to do what they want, whenever they want, how they want, whether it's the law or not, and we all know that. And so I have very strong opinions about this. Last year, I spent the last year in constitutional law in Florida, and one of my jobs was to go around and do a survey, and I literally went between, I'm still trying to get the number, between 4,000 and 5,000 homes on this very topic. What I found very interesting, several things. One was the majority of our nation does not know our Constitution. They rattle things off and don't know the Constitution. That's fact. Okay? Most of the people in this room couldn't even tell you the 5 liberties of the First Amendment. I dare you to ask. 2% of our population knows it. So when we talk about the Constitution, most people in this room do not know it. Okay? Also, I find it interesting, most of us do agree on a lot of things. None of us want violence, none of us want death, all of those things. But what the other thing I found is most people in our nation do not understand the Bible, as quoted previously, and I hear it all the time in the courtrooms, and it's inaccurate. That's unfortunate for our nation. So I'm not here to preach on religion, and I'm not here to preach on the Constitution. I am, however, adhering to the Constitution as far as life, okay? And one of the things that I found very interesting was the lack of education in those thousands and thousands of homes. The truth is, behind abortion is a whole lot of other stuff. I'm not going to go into that. You can research it yourself. But to deny that is to be absurd and uneducated. The more people got educated in the state of Florida, the biggest argument about abortion is between 0 and 15 weeks, not above. The more conversations you have, and I'm one of those that doesn't believe in abortion. I'm free to state that. Others would believe otherwise. I will say that the majority, I would say 99.9% of the people that I spoke to, when they understood the facts behind things, then they still stuck with 0 to 15 weeks. It was not beyond, it wasn't all of this other malarkey. So it's miseducation that happens in our society, and that's unfortunate. The other thing is what literally happens in abortion clinics. You can research that out yourself, and each side is going to have a difference of opinion. But at the end of the day, we have elected officials that have to make that. And again, I wouldn't want to be in your position. But the fact of the matter is that we stand for life, and the percentage of people that we're talking about as far as rape or medical issues that have to transpire is very, very minimal. That's the facts. Look them up, do your research. I am not negating, and my heart bleeds for somebody who has to lose a child. I think we should come up with different terms for that instead of abortion. I look at if a woman is going to lose her life or a baby is going to lose her life, and those are conversations. I will tell you, 90% of the people I spoke to were women that changed their minds once they were educated. Pro-choice kind of went a little this way, and pro-life went a little this way. And we're never going to meet in the same exact things, but I'm telling you, most of the pro-choice people change their minds based on the facts. We're using the wrong terminology. We want to help the women that are in danger or the babies that are in danger. We don't want rapes in our community. There's got to be a solution, but nobody wants to come to the table because they have opposite sides. That's where I think we should understand the truth. Look at the Constitution first and foremost.
Your time is up, ma'am.
About life, and that should be considered.
Thank you for speaking. Is there anyone else? Okay, with no one else to approach, I will tell you, the counselors will, and myself will have a statement on this subject at the end of this, which is not very far. We've just got a little bit of business to get through very quickly. So, establish the dates of public hearing, please.
Establish May 16th, 2023 as the public hearing date for consideration of 7A1A New Winery Liquor License Number 1 for Gruner Brothers Brewing, doing business as Gruner Brothers Brewing, located at 1301 Wilkins Circle. 7A1B, transfer of ownership for retail liquor license number 1 from Tin Shack LLC, doing business as Poplar Wine and Spirits, located at 1016 South Poplar Street to 1016 Poplar, oh, sorry. I have this written wrong, sorry. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
It's quite all right.
It just didn't seem like a name. Okay. Located at 1016 South Poplar to 1016 Poplar LLC, doing business as Poplar Wine and Spirits, located at 1016 Poplar LLC. 7A1C, new restaurant liquor license number 51 for Movie Palace Incorporated, doing business as Studio City Stadium 10 Cinemas, located at 5020 East 2nd Street.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing dates just read. So moved. Moved by Councilor Cathey, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Any abstention or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. And I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the transfer of ownership of retail liquor license number 37 to Bullhorn Brewing. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Fleur Tremel to J. Carter Napier, dated April 20th, 2023. Exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication as published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated April 25th, 2023. Exhibit number 3, liquor license application filed April 5th, 2023. Exhibit number 4, affidavit of website publication as published on the City of Casper website, dated April 25th, 2023.
Thank you. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, councilors, the only thing I think I would add, in addition to what's already been reported, is that indeed this is one of those licenses that have the address stipulation attached to it, and that stipulation is being met with this transfer.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the transfer of retail liquor license number 37 to please approach the lectern. Good evening. Please state your name.
Holden Kai, one of the owners of Bullhorn Brewing. For the community, we plan on doing family-friendly events along with acquiring this license. That comes with the location. We are a brewery first, but we do believe in family fun and continuing what used to be called Rock the Block. We're going to do our own thing and change that up a little bit, as well as try and get, you know, a safe place for all the car guys to meet up on weekly, and then just, you know, expanding also the local music and talent that comes from Casper, and we're really excited and probably see you soon to get our brewery license changed.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to retail liquor license number 37 to please approach the lectern. Okay, there being no others to speak for or against the transfer, I now declare the public hearing closed. Chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, authorize the transfer of ownership for retail liquor license number 37 from Charger Holdings LLC, DBA Charger Holdings LLC, located at 355 West Yellowstone, to Bullhorn Brewing LLC, doing business as Bullhorn Brewing, located at 355 West Yellowstone Highway.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Kathy, seconded by Counselor Jensen. Any discussion? I will tell you, it'll be nice to see something in that building, and I'm sure Mr. Huff will be very happy. So, any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Please read the ordinance. This is a second reading ordinance on, were we going to table this?
Mr. Mayor, this is one that potentially could be postponed to a date certain if council so chooses. You'll see another one as well where that option will be made available.
I guess since it's a second reading, we can move forward. Amber would abstain anyway. So please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Creating City of Casper, Wyoming Local Assessment District Number 159, hereinafter called the district, ordering the construction of improvements therein, describing the same, directing the preparation of plans and specifications therefore, providing for the publication of notice to contractors, fixing the boundaries of said district, ratifying action previously taken, and prescribing details in connection with said district.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read. Moved by Councilor Bond.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Jensen. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the West Ridge improvements, LAD? Okay, there being no one, any discussion? Okay, Brandy, or Councilor Haskins, excuse me.
I did have one question. We had talked about potentially putting together an FAQ for anyone that had not made it to the meeting or had opportunity. Did that happen?
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Councilor, that did happen.
Thank you. Okay, please cast your vote, or any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Second reading ordinance on Majestic Mountain Addition. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Approving a zone change of Lot 1, Majestic Mountain Addition, from Park Historic to General Business.
Thank you. Chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilor Haskins, seconded by Councilor Kathy. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the Majestic Mountain Addition? No? Okay. Discussion? Any amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. This is a second reading ordinance on the Highland Park Tennis Complex Addition. Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
Approving the Highland Park Tennis Complex Addition and the associated subdivision agreement.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read. Moved by Councilor Gamra, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the Highland Park Tennis Complex Addition? Okay, there being no one. Discussion? Amendments? Any amendments? Okay, very good. Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Second reading ordinance on the Lukashevich subdivision. Please read the ordinance on second reading title by title only.
Approving a plat, subdivision agreement, and zone change for the Lukashevich subdivision in the city of Casper, Wyoming.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilor Bond, seconded by Councilor Gamroth. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the Lukashevich subdivision? I see no one. Any discussion? Amendments? Okay, please cast your vote. Due to the absence of several counselors, I move to continue the third reading of this ordinance to May 16th. I'm sorry.
I did not record the vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please record the vote. I apologize.
With all counselors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Do we still read this ordinance before we move for a postponement of the vote when more counselors are here?
Mr. Mayor, I would suggest that if indeed there is a motion to postpone, it certainly could come up during the amendment portion of the process.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Third reading ordinance on liquor code amendments. Please read the ordinance on third reading by title only.
An ordinance approving amendments to the Liquor License Code, Sections 5.08.150 and 5.08.390.
The chair would entertain a motion to approve on third reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Councilor Gamrow, seconded by Councilor Jensen. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes. Please state your name.
One, two, check. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I stand before you today to address the upcoming vote on the proposed liquor ordinance change and share my thoughts and concerns, as well as propose a potential solution, the Responsible Venue Program. The Responsible Venue Program would allow participating establishments to extend their liquor hour sales by 2 hours later or 3 hours earlier, provided they meet certain criteria created by council and Casper PD throughout the year. This would allow council and venues to promote safe and responsible alcohol consumption. Certain criteria could include digital ID scanning and equipment that can help curb underage drinking, ensure proper training for security, as well as additional training for bartenders to address over-serving, as well as other metrics that council and CPD deem appropriate. Additionally, the program would provide the city with valuable data and metrics to ensure that extended hours are not causing additional unintended consequences. And it would also allow grant the city the authority to deny requests for extending hours if it is deemed not in the best interest of the city, such as during the school year. Should you choose not to pass this ordinance, the VFW and golf courses could still extend their hours through participation in the Responsible Venue Program. Furthermore, the program could help raise funds for the Tipsy Taxi program, which is primarily funded through the city, by requiring venues to participate in fundraising drives and earmarking funds received from the permitting process through the Responsible Venue Program to the Tipsy Taxi program. We can alleviate pressure through this, we can alleviate pressure on the city's budget for this crucial program, while continuing to support safe transportation options for those who have consumed alcohol. I would also like to express my frustration in the event that this vote continues today, despite several members not being present, some council members requesting to postpone the vote. It is the responsibility of the mayor to allow council members to make a decision on how they will vote at the time of voting, and not to assume a member of council will vote a certain way just because of their previous voting patterns. This assumption undermines the democratic process and disregards the fact that multiple members have changed their stance on this vote through the first and second reading. Additionally, I would like to express my concerns regarding the statements made by the city manager and city attorney, suggesting that the proposed ordinance is to correct an oversight, which is inaccurate as evidenced by the changes from the 2019 and 2021 amendments to this ordinance, or that it is to align with state statute. The change in 2017 was made to give the authority to local municipalities, and at the time of that change, this council, including former council member Chris Walsh, stated that, and I quote, "This is them saying we are not going to regulate cities and towns, so I do not see this as a recommendation at a statewide level. It seems to me that these statements may unintentionally create a narrative that is not entirely accurate, and I believe that it is important for us all to be mindful of the facts as we proceed with this discussion. In conclusion, I encourage council to consider the responsible venue program as a potential solution, whether the current ordinance passes or not. This program offers a balanced approach to extending hours while promoting responsible drinking, supporting public safety, and providing funding to crucial programs like Tipsy Taxi, while also implementing fact-based policies which will hopefully curb our 7-year upward trend in DUIs and alcohol-involved accidents within our city. I kindly ask that if council decides the responsible venue program is something that they are interested in, to please add it to an upcoming work session. This would allow me more time to expand on my vision for the program and to facilitate a collaborative discussion on the additional safety measures that council would like to see implemented. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hollier? Okay, very good. Discussion. Sir.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks, Seth, for doing your diligence. We've all received emails from you, and you've clearly done your research on this. I do think you bring up some good ideas. To me, the ordinance that we're considering at this moment is a separate issue from the alcohol incentive program, but I do think there's merit to that. I would love to see some sort of incentive program to reward or otherwise give praise to folks that are responsible alcohol establishments. And so I know we're working on budget stuff, so my guess is we are jam-packed for the next couple months, but I'd love to see that added in a future, potential future agenda item. But just want to appreciate, I know you've shown up to a lot of meetings, you've communicated a lot with council through phone calls, emails, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, would love to explore that, except in the future, separate from this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to echo Councilor Gamroth's sentiment. I do think there's merit in the responsible drinking program. I read the information that Seth has shared with us, and I think it's worthy of a discussion. I think, as I stated last time, as a city and a society, we evolve in our views and our attitudes towards liquor and substance use. And I think it's time for Wyoming and for Casper to kind of evolve along and look at ways to kind of keep everyone safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will say, I don't think that was a fair representation of our city manager and our city attorney and the research that was done on this. This does bring us into alignment with the rest of the establishments within our city. It does bring us within alignment of state statute. We are completely allowed to do such a thing. Anyway, with that said, I'll ask, are there any amendments? Mr. Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. Not necessarily an amendment, but I would motion that we table this until we have more of our colleagues present. Thank you.
Okay. Due to the absence of several councilors,
Mr. Mayor, if I might point of
Sir.
I might suggest, rather than tabling the matter, that we continue it to a date certain.
Correct.
And I believe the recommendation from staff would be to May 16th. So I just want to make sure that I think tabling would have some differing consequences.
Okay. So due to the absence of several councilors, I move to continue the third reading of this ordinance to May 16th, 2023. That motion was made.
I will adjust it retroactively. Let's pretend that's the motion I made.
Very good. Do I have a second?
And we'll pretend that's the motion I seconded.
Okay, very good. Any discussion on this motion? So in a sense, what we're doing is we are just moving this down to our next regularly scheduled city council meeting so that all of the councilors are here when a decision of this magnitude is made. So with that said, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Okay, we got two more things to get through, and then we'll get to the councilor comments. So, with that said, please read the consent resolutions by title only.
11A1, authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services between the City of Casper and HDR Engineering 11A2, authorizing a contract for professional services with Forterra Concrete Products Incorporated for manufacturing concrete blocks to be used at the Casper Compost Yard. 11A3, authorizing an agreement with LER Incorporated, doing business as Renner Sports Services for the Highland Park Pickleball Court resurfacing. 11A4, authorizing an agreement with Casper Building Systems Incorporated for the City Hall Project Safe Building Remodel. 11A5, authorizing amendment number 1 to the contract for professional services with WLC Engineering and Surveying for construction administration services for the Industrial Avenue Drainage and Surfacing Improvements, Elm to David. 11A6, authorizing an agreement between the City of Casper and the Natrona County Conservation District. 11A7, authorizing a transportation services contract for transit services for the town of Evansville, a Wyoming municipality for fiscal year 2023. 11A8, authorizing a telephone line easement agreement between the City of Casper, Wyoming and Natrona County, Wyoming. 11A9, authorizing submission of an application to the WaterSmart Aquatic Ecosystem Restoration Projects Grant Program. 11A10, authorizing acceptance of a child stabilization grant for the Wyoming Department of Family Services. 11A11, authorizing amendment 2 to the grant award agreement between the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and City of Casper, Regional Response Grant number 20. 11A12, authorizing amendment 2 to the grant award agreement between the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and City of Casper, Regional Response Grant number 21. And 11A13, authorizing the grant award agreement between the Wyoming Office of Homeland Security and City of Casper.
Thank you. That was a mouthful. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda items just read. Moved by Councilor Gamroth, seconded by Councilor Haskins. City Manager, would you like to comment on any of these items? No, sir. No, thank you. Any abstention or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Consent minute action titles, if you would please read those.
12A1, rejecting all bids received for the 2023 5-year solid waste baler bag procurement. And 12A2, appointing one new member of Casper's Council of People with Disabilities for a term of 3 years beginning May 2nd, 2023.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action agenda items just read. So moved. Moved by Councilor Gamroth, seconded by Councilor Bond. Thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes? Please cast your vote. And please record your vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, we ask councilors to bring forward relevant concerns or items of interest. We will start with you, Councilor Jensen.
All right. There's a couple things here. So wanted to remind everyone, earlier in this meeting, it was the 307 Tennis Club's Carnival is coming up on May 20th. So to the 307 Tennis Club, in our bright spot of the day, then learn how to play tennis. So May 20th, mark your calendars for that, 307 Carnival. Also, the National Historic Trails Center is having an open house on May 4th from 5 to 7. We'd love anybody to come and join us. It is open house style with a lightly themed, May the 4th be with you. And then, let's see, we have Corey McDaniel Duo is going to be up there, Popular Wine and Spirits. So food, music, and fun. Please come join us and check us out. We'll have some reenactors as well. Also, I just want to, it was very emotional tonight listening to all of the stories, personal, and just how you all, what you're standing up for. And I have, I believe, you know, I love that we are a civil community where we can come up and we can speak like this and put out our feelings and have people listen. It's a hard topic, and I have, you know, I believe have beliefs on both ends of things. And so, but the main thing is that we are a community and that we can do this civilly. And I just really appreciate the fact that we can all sit here and have a discussion and agree to disagree or whatever, but the voices have been heard, and they have been, I mean, we've all hear them and they resonate in all different ways. And so thank you.
Councilor Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm going to take a little bit of our time this evening, but it's always for good reason. First off, I want to acknowledge the Rotary Club of Casper, their donation of $25,000 to the city skate park in North Casper. Just did a bunch of repairs over there. There was a lot of holes, divots, and stuff in the concrete, so big thank you to the Rotary Club for helping us to get that in better condition. We also have them to thank for the bouldering park they created, Crossroads Adventure Park, doing a lot of good in this community, maintaining the bridle trail. They do have their duck derby coming up in August, so if you like to support the good work that they're doing, all these public service projects, I would recommend you buy a couple raffle tickets, not only to support that work, but also you might win $5, $3, or $1,000. So pretty good deal all around. I saw an article, the Cheyenne wastewater treatment plant generates its own hydroelectric power. I don't know if you had saw that, Carter, but over the 50-year life of the generator, it will allegedly generate a net income between $31 million and $35 million, according to the Administrative and Public Affairs Coordinator for the City of Cheyenne Board of Public Utilities. And so I would, again, further off in the future, but I would love to discuss that as a future work session agenda item. If there was some way for us to do an analysis to determine whether we could reap some of the same benefits that Cheyenne is with the installation of that hydroelectric power plant down there. Last Saturday, I attended the Child Development Center's Art a la Carte event at the Ford Wyoming Center. I don't believe they gave a total raised at the event, but it seemed like a big success. There were a lot of paddle raises and live auctions going for very good prices, so it sounded like a very successful event. They recognized Susie McMurray for her huge contributions over the years, as well as recognize some of the children and families who have benefited from those services. So really good event. And then this last Sunday, I attended the ribbon cutting ceremony. Natrona County Library revealed their story walk over there by Crossroads Adventure Park. They put a story along the trail on a page like every 20 feet. The book right now is Bear Came Along by Richard Morris, and they're going to switch it out every few weeks throughout the summer. So something fun to do to get your kids outside and do some reading. So I'd encourage you all to check it out. And then lastly, I have a lot to say, and so I want to touch on my bases, and so I've written most of these comments down. I hope folks don't mind, but I'm much more articulate when I got something to go off of. So first off, I'd just like to take a moment to thank everyone who came out to this meeting tonight to share their perspectives on this issue. This is probably one of the fuller houses I've seen in my 2.5 years on council. It's top 5, I'd say, maybe even top 3. So I always love seeing people come out and engage. I actually get really depressed when I look out and there's our Parks and Rec director, and she's the only one sitting out here. So I like when we have a lot of participation. It shows people are engaged in the process. So really, truly, I appreciate everyone being here. The range of perspectives we've heard tonight is a testament to the diversity of thoughts and beliefs in our community, and I want to express my appreciation for all y'all's willingness to come out this evening and not only engage in this important dialogue, but also just show up. I know a lot of folks here didn't speak, they just came to show up, and still, I think that deserves recognition. For those of you concerned about the use of dehumanizing language and violent imagery in discussions surrounding reproductive health care, I want you to know that I share your concerns. Referring to people using language like baby killers and baby murderers, or referring to places like Wellspring as cults of death, mutilation factories, or other hyperbolic nouns can have dangerous consequences and can contribute to a culture of violence and intimidation. I imagine the rest of council, including the mayor, I'm guessing Julie, Lauren, and all the staff at Wellspring and other people have all been victim these past couple weeks to harassment and intimidation, both ends of the spectrum. And at the end of the day, we will unfortunately have very little to show for all that unnecessary pain and strife that's been caused in our community. It's important that we recognize the power of our words and the impact they can have on others. Carl Sandburg said, "Be careful with your words. Once they are said, they can only be forgiven, not forgotten." As elected officials, it is our responsibility to create a safe and inclusive community where everyone is respected and valued. We must be vigilant in calling out harmful language and actions that seek to marginalize and dehumanize certain groups, because our community is stronger when we come together in support of one another, even when we have differing opinions. We are more alike than we are unalike. I genuinely believe that. I had a very different speech originally prepared for tonight that I had mostly written in the days following the mayor's comments. And I'll admit, the first draft was pretty harsh. I had sent him some texts from our Wyoming Association of Municipalities board retreat in Pinedale the morning after the news stories published his comments, and I told him, quote unquote, you need to cool it with the abortion stuff. I also told him that you have the right as an American to express your opinion, but you have a responsibility as mayor to set a higher bar for conduct when exercising that right. We hadn't talked in person about it, and I didn't necessarily plan on it before making public comments until my colleague, Councilor Pollack, who's unable to join us this evening, suggested it as a good idea. I knew it was, and I had made excuses to myself about why I didn't have the time to do it. We do all have full-time jobs up here outside of the council chambers, but I respect her opinion greatly, and I knew I had to get together with the mayor before I said my piece here tonight. So Councilor Pollack joined us, and we had a coffee last Friday. Josh at Bourgeois Pig makes the best iced lavender latte in town, by the way, so if you're into that sort of thing, I would check it out. Man, it's seriously amazing. That guy knows how to make a latte. During this coffee, I expressed all of these concerns and more to Mayor Nell. I explained why I thought his rhetoric was dangerous and why our policymaking body should strive to remain as community-oriented as possible, because it is the last bastion of nonpartisan public service that we have left. Our council should stick to the issues that are directly under our purview, and we should, when possible, seek out areas of common interest rather than those of division and disdain. And to his credit, I found Bruce was very receptive to that feedback, as he has been with me and others before on other issues. The non-discrimination ordinance comes to mind, of which he became an ardent supporter. I also felt like he expressed genuine humility, that he had done a lot of self-reflection that past week, and that he had spoken to a lot of people, most importantly his wife, but I think also his children and others, to further inform his opinion on this topic. And regardless of how vehemently I disagreed with his comments, I do have to give credit where it's due, because not many people these days are willing to adjust their opinions when presented with new insight or information. I don't know the mayor that well, but my experience with him, offline primarily, has been that he's a man with a big heart. And my guess is that he has lots of family and friends in his life who would attest to his being a good man. And for the folks that caught our last regular meeting, he was up here bawling all over the proclamation for organ donation awareness. And so I know he has that capacity. And I don't say that as an attempt to embarrass you. I actually really appreciated that sentiment. I bring it up to illustrate the fact that, bring up the fact that was made by my good friend Riata sharing her story earlier, that the world is not black and white, and neither are its people. Despite what others have implied this evening, I know you have empathy. So I'm asking for that from you tonight, from you and anyone else in the room who is supportive of your initial comments. Empathy for the women who are burdened with these life-altering decisions. Empathy for the people in the room who have illustrated the nuances surrounding the decisions by telling their stories. And a recognition that words matter. I don't think we will make converts of anyone on the issue of abortion in this room tonight, and I don't think that we should. I don't think that should be our goal. But I do hope the one thing we can all acknowledge before we go home is that even if you still disagree with the concept of abortion in practice, that it's important for all of us, inside this room and out, to establish and stake claim to the idea that we as a community will not endorse or tolerate speech that dehumanizes our neighbors, that sows division when we are trying to reap unity. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "We must learn to live together as brothers or perish together as fools." I don't know about any of you, but I don't fancy being a fool. The mayor has the luxury of speaking after me, so the possibility is still there of me being made out to be one, whether I fancy it or not, but I really am hoping that you meant the things that you said at the coffee shop the other day. And instead of viewing this as a hill that you have to die on, you view it as an opportunity to seed the field with another crop, a crop of whose harvest will feed our sense of community rather than poison our public discourse. I want to thank everyone again for coming out and sharing your thoughts this evening. Taking the initiative and having a presence here is more powerful than most of you will probably know. I know that this issue is deeply personal for many of you, and I thank you for the courage and strength to come tell us your stories. Thank you. Drive safe.
Thank you, Kyle. Councilor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a couple of reminders about this weekend. On Saturday, May 6th, is the fundraiser for the Wyoming Senior Center. They're having their Night at the Races at 6 p.m., I believe, 5 p.m.? 5 p.m. And just want to encourage everyone to come out and support the Senior Center. They do a great job of supporting our seniors and providing meals and recreation and so forth. Secondly, I just want to extend my sympathy to the family of Officer Yurkowitz. I'm probably mispronouncing that. I apologize. But to his family and colleagues who recently passed. Next, I'd just like to thank the folks who came out tonight, especially those who shared such personal experiences, and it was deeply moving. I appreciate that. Just a brief statement. It won't be quite as long or eloquent as Kyle's, but it's at least not as long. No, I'm just kidding, Kyle. Okay, so what I was thinking about as I looked at the letters and emails and text messages and phone calls that I received following this conversation here, I was reminded about my parents who worked in the political arena and served as volunteers in the community in which I grew up. They set an outstanding example for me of treating others with civility and respect. When I've sometimes fallen short of that myself, now serving in this council seat, I often think back to them and other role models in my life, and the unwritten responsibility we have to balance our own rights to free speech and setting the tone of political conversations in our own social circle and community. Disagreement and debate will always be with us. However, the way we choose to respond and express ourselves has great influence. We can choose to promote violence and contempt, or with restraint and thoughtfulness, we can choose to model tolerance and courtesy.
Thank you. Mr. Cathy?
Couple of things. One of the things that was on consent tonight was the MOU with the Conservation District. And there could be a lot of people that don't understand a little bit of what that's all about, but basically they try to help the irrigators in Natrona County cut back on the amount of water they put on the ground by going from flood irrigation and open ditches to piped and sprinkler. Because what winds up happening is that excess water goes down to the Cody Shale, which is immediately under this entire area, and that Cody Shale, when that water hits it, it leaches out selenium, which then gets into the river. And therefore is in our drinking water, winds up being in our wastewater that we put back in the river. And in the long run, the dropping of the salinity levels in the river has taken our river from a bad river to basically a blue ribbon trout stream. Also, it will help down the road as the EPA continues to lower their nutrient limits and heavy metals that are being discharged from our water treatment plant. Because something that the EPA does not take into account on those effluents is what the inlet water came in at. So if our inlet water comes in at, say, 7 parts, and the EPA says you can only have 4, we have to wind up cleaning that extra 3% out of our intake water. So everything that the Conservation District has been doing ultimately winds up helping our wastewater treatment plant down the road. So that's one of the reasons we continue to support them and help them out, because it is helping our city residents and the tax revenues that will have to come about for the water treatment plant in the coming years. Secondly, Judge Huber mentioned Doug Follick. He was a great person for this community, and one of the things that Doug forgot to mention is he would love to ski and was on the ski patrol for 20 years possibly before he wound up resigning. So that was a big, and that's all strictly volunteer. So that's another aspect of Doug's life that has affected a lot of people in this community, helping the injured and the hurt on Casper Mountain. So again, another great person for our community and a great loss. Thirdly, the mayor has the right to say what he wants as an individual based on the First Amendment. He should not be shouted down because you don't believe in his opinions. I am a pro-lifer myself. I cherish the 2 children that we had. we were never supposed to have had children. So the fact that God granted us those 2 lives is a very big blessing to me, and I hate to see people waste those blessings from the Lord. And if it's felt that it needs to happen, maybe we ought to think about what we were doing before we became pregnant. And along with that, that's my opinion, I don't appreciate the boos and the groans. By the same token, I do appreciate abortion for rape, incest, and the health of the mother. Those are 3 very important things, because particularly when it gets to the health of the mother, you're then looking at the loss of 1 life versus potentially the life of 2. And so we do need to respect that as well. And those become more the responsibility of the primary care physician and not an abortion clinic doctor. So I do thank you for that, and that is my opinion on that issue.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Haskins?
I was going last.
You're not, I am.
So I did want to mention, nobody cares at this point. I know you all want to know my opinions, but I did want to mention that Councilor Bond and I met with the judge this week. We learned a whole lot about how our municipal court is working towards the same goals that we are as a council, towards rehabilitation and not just punishment in regards to things like that. We are going to be meeting next month with a handful of other people. I believe Carter's coming as well to talk about how the courts are using the community for some of those options. It's something that I'm finding very interesting, especially since I haven't actually spent a whole lot of time in that particular courtroom. So, yay me. But in regards to tonight, Kyle, I think what you said was absolutely fabulous, and I wish you'd have slid that over here so I could have had a lot to follow with that. But I did want to point out the nonpartisan part. While I do appreciate that we all have opinions, I also joined council and did not join other branches of government because this is nonpartisan and because I firmly agree with the black and white, and there's so much more gray than we like to talk about. So I appreciate everybody who came, everybody who spoke and shared their stories, some of which were harder to listen to than others, but I appreciate you all being here, and nobody up here, it didn't fall on deaf ears. We are listening to you. And like I said, Kyle, I wish I could have just read your speech because I think it was fabulous, and I do think that we all need to be mindful that what we say is definitely not falling on deaf ears. You hear us, you listen to us. You might even respect some of our opinions. So I think we need to be mindful and be very careful about sharing our opinions personal, because you didn't vote for me for my personal opinions. You don't know my personal opinions. So that's all I have to that, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'll touch on a couple business items first. CNFR meeting last night. CNFR is coming up June 11th through the 17th. Season ticket sales are higher than they've ever been. So it looks like it's going to be a very successful year for us this year. So if you haven't gotten tickets yet or you want to partake, there's usually seats available for that. June 11th through the 17th. 1 cent, I wanted to address the 1 cent because we just had our delving out of the money, if you will. When we advertised for the 1 cent, which is voted on by our voters at a 70% rate for over 50 years now, part of that money does go to our nonprofits that help support our community, our police department. They help with the mental health. They help with just a plethora of things, and they all apply. We had 5.8 million asks, and we only had 2.25 million to give out. So we very cautiously, very lengthily went through that arduous process and made those awards. But we've had some grumblings from the community. Why is our 1 cent money going to nonprofits? Well, that was in the packet that was sent to the voters, so that you understand. $22 million, just under 22 million went to our streets and our roads. And to give you an idea of how that looks, we have a grade, like if you're in school, we have a grade of 59 on our roads, and after $22 million investment over the next 4 years, we will still be at a 59. There are 12th and 13th Street, just for an example, 8 million miles a year are put on that by our vehicles. And so, you know, everybody says we misuse money and we're not spending it right. I'm telling you, it's an impossibility to try to stay on top of. The one advantage we get to 1 cent is on normal sales tax, we get 21 cents on the dollar back from the state on 4% of sales tax. On the 1 cent, we get 78 cents on that dollar that stays right here in our community, and a lot of that money is spent by people who come to visit, and tourism, and people coming from out of town. 1 cent is a really good thing for us, and I don't think any of us would apologize for giving to nonprofits, the Youth Crisis Center, the Mercer House. I mean, we just delve out that money as frugally and as best as we can. So I hope you understand how vitally important that is to our community, and the fact that it is funded by a lot of folks that just come here to visit. They don't even live here. So, and now we'll get to, I'm sure what you've all been waiting for. I wrote a very long, lengthy dissertation, if you will, concerning this. But what I learned tonight, and I learned from Kyle and Amber, is nobody's challenging my view. It seems like even the folks that don't see the way I do don't have a problem with my view. They understand that I'm pro-life, and I understand that they're pro-choice. That's not the issue. The issue is I get emotional, sorry. In poor taste, I made a comment that I feel was misinterpreted. I did not put a picture of a burning building. I didn't do that. I put a picture of a guy dancing in a fire, because in my religious beliefs, when you sin against God, you get to go to hell unless you repent. And through the blood of Christ, you have that opportunity. My problem with the clinic is they do them on a daily basis. Nobody's repenting. I'm not saying if you have an abortion, you can't find your way. What I'm saying is an abortion clinic is a whole nother story in my book. Now, with that, I will tell you, that clinic isn't just an abortion clinic. I know they give pap smears and birth control and women's health, and I understand that. And as the mayor, I welcome them into our community. They are a business, a nonprofit business, but a business that is legally operating in our city, that pays taxes. So as the mayor, I welcome them. That's not the issue for me. The issue is the unborn child. And state law will tell you, state law, if I leave these chambers tonight and I'm texting on my phone, which is illegal, and I run a red light because I'm not paying attention, and I hit a pregnant woman and I kill her, I am not only charged with murder of that pregnant woman, I am charged with that unborn child. And I go to life in prison for killing 2 people. Yes, it is a fact in Casper, Wyoming. State law says an embryo or a child in utero, if they're in, doesn't matter how long, they are a human being and they belong to the Homo sapien race. That's where my fight comes from. But I'm not going to debate it anymore with you, because we understand that we see things differently. That's my personal opinion. Now, as a mayor, I hope that my comments weren't a reflection on the city or on my fellow councilors, because it's how I feel. It's not my position as the mayor. My position as the mayor is it's a business operating here and they're welcome here. And I wasn't judging anybody. I'm not the judge. That's the job of the big guy. All I was doing was trying to give information, and Mr. True put it very, very eloquently. Whether you believe it or not, I was doing it out of kindness, because that's my belief. If you don't believe like I do, it's okay. But then my words should mean nothing to you. If you don't believe in God like I do, then that shouldn't even matter to you. It shouldn't make a bit of difference. But I will tell you, I apologize. I apologize to all of you. I apologize to the city of Casper and all their residents, because I did not mean in any way for that to hurt anyone in any way. I would never do anything to incite violence in our city. I would never do anything to incite violence against anyone. That's not how I live my life. And what I posted, I look now at poor taste. And I get it. But that wasn't my intent. I promise you that was not my intent. I would never want to hurt anybody or incite any type of violence against anyone. I just don't live like that. And these fellow counselors have been with me long enough. They know where I'm at, they know my heart, and they know I'm telling you the truth. With that said, some folks had asked for my resignation. I'm not going to resign. Just because we don't. Thank you. But just because we don't see eye to eye, if you go to work and share an opinion and your boss doesn't like it, should you be fired? That's ridiculous. What we should do is what we did tonight. We should have fair dialogue with each other. We should be able to have discussions about this. And I'm with Counselor Kathy. That poor lady and her husband, what they must have went through, I can't even imagine. But they need to come up with a different name. That to me is not an abortion. I'm sorry, it's just not. And so there should be another name for that. There are 2 lives at stake, and I understand that. I get it. I wish people would go more in the line of discussion, picking up the phone, calling me. I had some great discussions this week with a lot of people. And they even told me, I don't agree with what you said, but I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to take a stand. You don't think for a minute when I posted that I didn't know I was going to get it? I knew what was coming, but I'm telling you, I am strong in my convictions. I'm okay with what I said. I just wish I would have said it a different way so that it wasn't offensive to anybody. But I stand by my beliefs. And when I get to heaven, I don't want God to look at me and go, you were in a position to speak for me and you turned your cheek. Oh, no, I didn't. And I paid a price for it. And I'm okay with that. I am. But I just don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. I don't want to ostracize anybody. I don't want anybody to ever feel threatened or live in fear because of something that came out of my mouth. I don't roll that way. And so if that happened to you, I wholeheartedly apologize to you because not my intent. So with that said, we will close, but I would like to, if you folks would indulge Councilor Huber and have a moment of silence for Mr. Follick. That would be much appreciated. Okay, the next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, May 9th in the Council meeting room. A regular Council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, May 16th. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding personnel. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session, and at the conclusion of that executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for purposes of adjournment. Thank you. Thank you. Moved by Councilor Gamroth, seconded by Councilor Jensen. There being a majority of members present to adjourn into an executive session having been moved and seconded, that motion requiring 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote. And please record the vote.
With all councilors voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you.